indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Art. Okay, the first item on tonight is the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Art and a second by Gina to approve the consent agenda as is. I'll start the roll with Maureen.
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
Okay. Brandy?
Aye.
Sandra?
Aye.
Gina and
Aye.
Art? Aye. Okay. I said my and a little too quick there, Gina, sorry. Okay, staff recognition reports, item number 2. Gary, do you have anything tonight, sir?
In light of the extended agenda, we have nothing, Your Honor.
Okay. And I do not, mayor's appointments, I have none this evening, so we'll go right on to item number 4, public comment and mayor's response period. We allow this time for folks to get up here, as long as it's not on this evening's agenda and or something in front of planning and zoning or board of adjustment. We'll give you 3 minutes. Please state your name and let us know what you'd like to talk about.
Victoria Seaver, 121 North Lily, Moscow. When two things come together, I got to mention it. So walking through Otteness Park, I'm going, there's a cement pad. What's going in there? What's going in there? Oh, it's a sign honoring Lily and Otteness from I think it's from the Latah Historic Society. It's really nice to have that in there for our little park. And coincidentally, in today's paper, page 2, they have 5 years ago, 10 years ago, blah, blah, blah. 10 years ago today, Moscow City Council approved agreement to purchase the property between Lily and Asbury's to turn it into a potential pedestrian pathway or pocket park, and it is both. Used to be the railroad corridor from Columbia Grain, and it also says it's a good investment for children in the area who don't have a closer park to go to. And little kids go to that tot lot quite a bit. I can hear them at my house playing over there. And so thank you for, even though I don't know if any of you were there at the time, but thank you for our park. We love parks. Good job. Yay, Otteness.
Thank you, Victoria. Anybody else like to come up and speak before we move on? Okay, well, we will move on to item number 5, which is Citizens Commission report. We've got the Farmers Market Commission. We've got Amanda Argoni with us and Jamie Hill as well. So, Amanda?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members and City staff. Amanda Argona, Community Events Manager, primarily responsible for taking charge of the Moscow Farmers Market, which looks really different this year. And that has also affected the Farmers Market Commission. So we didn't meet for quite some time, but we're back at it again, virtually, and some folks attending in person. So we're here to just give our annual commission report. Jamie Hill has been the chair since 2019, and when I first came on in 2018, she was the vice chair. So I'm not going to take up too much time speaking, and I'm going to turn it over to Jamie to provide the update.
Thank you, Amanda.
Alrighty. Everybody can see that okay? Oh, that's a
Actually,
cute little
you
microphone.
can't see it on me. I can't see it on me.
So, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you guys for having me. Like Amanda said, as every commission has reported lately, things have been nuts this year. So, for our annual update.
You need to share it.
It's not sharing at the moment? That's why.
Click the share button at the bottom.
Silly. This one.
There you go.
Dave always keeps me on my toes. Okay, so the Farmers Market Commission is made up of a couple different sections of community members. We have 3 representatives that are specifically vendors. Kelly Kingsland is our produce vendor. Stu Scott is new to us this year. He is our craft vendor, and recently we had our specialty vendor position open up. Renee Love needed to step down for other reasons. So we will be recruiting a new vendor to start up with us at the beginning of next year. We have 2 specialty spots. Our extension rep is Colette DePhelps, and our chamber rep is Jenny Ford. And then we have 4 members at large, so just community members who have an interest in the market. Myself, Mackenzie Lauren, Ryan Lazo, and Carrie Morsek. And that is, oh, rude. That's 3 new members since last year's report. That was kind of a weird timing because of all of our times off the commission. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more retention. But this year we lost a bunch of people who had really long-standing terms with the commission. So I just kind of want to give a shout out to Joanne Munita, who was with us for a very long time. She was on the commission before it was a commission. And Linda Heath was a great vendor. I learned so much from her in my first couple years on the commission, and she's greatly missed too. So our mission, something that we do when we start every single meeting of our commission is I ask someone to read this aloud, just to keep it in our minds that the Moscow Farmers Market celebrates life on the Palouse by providing the community with the opportunity to buy and sell locally farmed and or created agricultural products, crops, meat, cheese, wine, etc., distinctive handmade goods, artisan pieces, and original recipe cuisine. This venue is meant to encourage and support sustainable economic, social, and environmental practices. I think a couple of our commission members almost have this memorized, but it's definitely really helpful to us serving as citizens to remember why we've been appointed to our jobs and what we're there to do. So the motor-in market was something new this year. It was a COVID baby. Something completely new for us to test out. We actually utilized this. Amanda and her crew put it into place a little bit later than the normal market would have started, but it subsidized for the regular market for a little bit. So I've got some fun numbers to share with you. The colors in orange are the new customers to the motor-in market specifically. So that first week, May 16th, you'll see we had 123 customers, all brand new. And then as it continues, you see the green on top is the customers who were return customers, and the orange is still new customers. So we did see a really solid contingency of people who were willing to come, basically order ahead or do a little shopping online, show up and get some produce. Very low contact, but still allowed them to support local farmers instead of larger chains. Another interesting number, I thought, was the number of customers and the number of orders. So the green line is the number of customers. Again, it relates to that last graph you saw. And then the orange is the number of orders. So each customer had the opportunity to actually purchase from a different number of vendors. So if they bought from 2 different farms, that would count as 2 orders as opposed to 1. So this is something we normally don't get to track when we do market data gathering. So this was kind of a really interesting thing to see that, that first week we had 123 shoppers and they were pretty much shopping 3 different farms a person, and really spreading that love around. Lastly, I think this is really impressive. If we add up all of the customers we had all together, new and old, of every week we had over 400 customers. That's obviously nothing in comparison to our 10,000 a week average that we used to see at the regular market. But I think having spent some time, I was lucky enough to go to a farmers market conference with Amanda in February, and seeing comparison to some other really small markets, this number is incredibly impressive to me, and I'm very grateful of the staff and the people who made it happen. So we've got just a couple pictures for you to see and enjoy. Again, I want to thank the vendors and the city staff and the commission members who helped make this really successful. We had a lot of comments about it. We had a lot of people who really loved it. It provided that option of no contact. So here are a couple things said online. I'm so grateful for the motor-in market this year. I know it's a lot more effort for the Moscow Farmers Market and farmers, but I wouldn't be able to get my local produce without you. Thank you. These are just a couple of the examples that we have, but we've pretty much received nothing but good. I personally have been getting feedback from people all over town saying, no matter what happens, I hope the motor-in stays. I really love that option. It suits me and my family better. We know from research that the regular market, people usually go to make that a social event. They go to have a good time. They go to do their shopping and fill in the blank. The Motor Inn market is specifically really for coming, getting vegetables, leaving, coming, getting produce, leaving. But those are some equally important customers that I think it's been really nice for us to have a minute to really see and get to know. So the regular market, so many changes. Like I said, I know you guys have heard report after report saying, well, because of COVID, we couldn't. So I kind of toned that down a bit. First up, our limitations. Obviously, 10,000 people on Main Street in one day is not really a great idea right now. So dots were painted on Main Street to help guide social distancing. The initial markets, we included attendance limits. We had volunteers from the commission, other city staff. Megan Cherry helped literally clicking and counting people as they walked in, and commissioners standing on every boundary of the market saying, okay, somebody left, we can let one more in, really counting one by one. But people were still grateful to be there. They were grateful even in the terrible rainy weather to be at the market. We were requiring masks. We had the vendor booths spaced out. Initially, they were really, really far apart and have slowly gotten a little closer together. We are requiring walls on the tents of those who have neighbors, so we can kind of allow for some of that scrunching to get more vendors in. It's really been a balance that I've been amazed to watch Amanda work through. Seeing people who are willing to come, but maybe they're not quite comfortable, versus the people who are like, come shop at my booth, I don't care what's going on. We really run the gamut, and we want to make sure that our vendors are happy and comfortable, first and foremost, because they are the people who really make our market run. So here are some photos of those first couple weeks. We've seen a lot of new booth designs, meaning there's not really much out to touch and play with and no samples, but some people have really gotten creative in how they make that work for them now. So whether that means new signage, whether that means now they're just kind of piling their produce and really focusing a lot more on talking about it. I've learned so much more about tomatoes this year that I didn't know I needed to know. So while it is different and a new experience for all of us, I think it's really helped everybody kind of learn more, which is one of the major points of the market too, is that you get to meet the people who are growing your food and talk to them about the who and the how and the why. So the vendors, last year our vendor roster had 129 vendors. This year our roster only has about 75 active vendors, and that does include the Motor Inn market. So we are seeing lower numbers, and while I don't have any income numbers to report back, I do feel confident in saying that our vendors are still doing relatively well. They seem to be really happy, and the vendors that are there, initially we were focusing on only allowing agricultural products in, produce over craft goods, making sure that the initial intent of the farmers market was to support those farmers. And we've slowly grown that as our capacity has allowed. Things that we've learned this year, one of the biggest parts of the Moscow Farmers Market Commission is our jury process. We actually jury every vendor who comes to the market with new items that are not agricultural. So if those cute little kid dresses that you see, or the stuffed monsters that you see, or somebody else, any like pottery, wood items, all of those things are actually juried ahead of time and are chosen based on their value and how good we think they'll be for our market. If we think that their quality is high enough, if we think they're appropriate, we make sure that we don't have too many of the same thing. So this year, because we weren't able to see all those things in person, our jury had to be virtual, and it helped us find a new format that is something we've kind of been wanting to do for a while. So it was nice to finally have a real break from the jurying process to say, okay, here's what's important, here's what's not. Next year, I hope to report to you that we'll be re-jurying aged vendors as well, just to make sure that they're still keeping that high quality that we expect and that our customers expect. We've postponed our site visits this year, so we have not gone on our group trips out to farms to see how they're growing their crops. But that is something that we're looking forward to kind of doubling up on next year. And overall, I think this year has just allowed a lot of opportunities for us to grow, for us to learn, to get a better understanding of how the market works, as well as what we can do to improve it in the future. That's all I've got. Can I answer any questions?
Jamie, 2020 has been a strange year for all of us. It doesn't matter where you're at. And so with our farmers market, it's been one of the key summer social things you're speaking about. You know, we want to get folks in and get them out with their vegetables. And I tell you what, that's tough for me because I like to talk to lots of people. And usually it's a good hour, hour and a half. I can buy my stuff in about 5 minutes, but I like to BS with lots of folks, but it is a social event. So I'm very much looking forward to next year. And you know what? Sometimes we get knocked down on some things, but we never give up, and we pick ourselves up, and we move forward. And that's what you guys have done in the farmers market, and you've done a very good job with it. And I've came down and gone through the motor thing several different times. I thought it was really set up well. So, any questions from council for Jamie, Brandy?
I don't have a question, but I would just say that farmers market is one of those examples I never heard from any of you, like, we can't do it. It was more, how can we do it? And being very flexible and then assessing each week and finding, okay, I think it was very smart to start very cautiously and conservatively and build from there. And so you've done a great job with that.
Thank you.
Sandra?
So you did allude to the possibility, or at least people have really liked the motor inn. I've had a lot of questions on that myself, and I've enjoyed it, not the buying, but the giving out. Are you planning to do that again? Do you know yet?
At this point in time, the plan is to offer motor in through the rest of the season, and then we will be sending out a Survey Monkey to all of the users, the customer side, plus the vendors. One thing we've noticed is while it was open to all vendor types, it's really meant for the agricultural vendors to take advantage of. We do have a few craft vendors on there right now who it seems to work. But based on those results, and then whether or not we would have staff capacity to offer it, I think would be kind of the big lingering question mark, because if downtown gets to any semblance of a normal year, we know how many staff we need, minimum downtown. So it's making sure that we have staff for both places.
Good. Any other comments from council for Jamie and or Amanda?
I feel like Maureen's trying to say.
Maureen, are you trying to say something? Because we cannot hear you.
Okay, we'll try again.
Okay.
I just want to say, Amanda, that you and the commission have done an amazing job this year. I've now been to the Motor Inn, and that's always very efficiently run. Crew somehow always makes it to the right place, it seems to me. And then just learning each week what you needed to do and changing was impressive. You did a great job. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the commission stepping up. We definitely could not have done or learned the certain aspects without them, so.
And I love the costumes.
Well, listen, thank you very much for the hard work you've done, Jamie and Amanda, because this was a whole learning curve for you guys this spring, starting off with the thing, and I've been down there several different times. I've been impressed with how you've done it, and I promised Amanda that I would not loiter early on, right off the bat, because she knows me pretty well, so I kind of went about my business, because you know, I tell you what, she'll keep right on top of things. And so with that, anyway, thank you so very much for the great job you guys have done. Thank you. Tell everybody on the commission, thank you, Jamie as well. Okay, with that, we are going to move on to item number 6, which is a public hearing, Gateway on 6th edition rezone preliminary plat and planned unit development, known as a PUD. And we've got Mike Ray with us this evening. Good evening, Mike.
Evening, Your Honor, council members. Assume we're all able to see that. So before you tonight, we have a public hearing for a project referred to as Gateway on 6th Edition, and includes a rezone, preliminary plat, and a planned unit development. It's 2.49 acres in size. It's generally located north of the intersection of 6th Street and Deacon Avenue. There's a proposed preliminary plat, Gateway on 6th Edition. It includes 27 townhouse parcels, 1 multifamily residential parcel, that's the R4 zone, and 3 central business parcels. The PUD request is just on the property that's proposed to be zoned R4. Includes 27 townhouse dwellings on those townhouse lots, a 4-story multifamily building on the R4 lot. Includes 18 dwelling units and then an enclosed parking garage on the ground floor. It also utilizes 2 existing parking lots that were previously used for U of I student parking. And then there's access provided additionally via an internal courtyard. It also serves as emergency services access drive through the development. The rezone request, currently the property is a conglomeration of multiple zoning districts, the motor business zone, the multifamily R4 zone, central business zone, and university zoning districts. And the proposal is to really clean that up and rezone those 4 zoning districts to a combination of central business and R4. So this is the subject property, consists of rather large kind of linear parcels left over from railroad property that ran through this property at one point in time. You can see Gormley here to the west with the softball fields, and these are the 2 existing parking lots that were previously used by the University of Idaho. This would be Patty's Kitchen here to the south. It does kind of a horseshoe around that property. These are some storage units here to the northwest. And then property has frontage on 6th Street to the south. And this would be Lily Street, 4th Street here in the area. Primarily to the northeast, you have multifamily residential. It's usually a mixture. There are numerous types of residential, range between single family, 2-family, and multifamily in the area. And then as you head further down 6th Street, primarily some commercial uses, restaurants in that area. And then to the southwest, you have the University of Idaho campus. Just looking at the topography of the area, so each one of those green lines represents a one foot elevation change. So you see the property is relatively flat. Paradise Creek does transect Gormley here to the west of the property, and that's what represents the steep bank as it crosses 6th Street. Taking a look at the comprehensive plan land use designation, it's currently designated as urban mixed, as well as a lot of the property to the northeast and to the east and to the southeast. This blue designation represents the university. This is a Parks, Rec, and Open Space zone with Gormley Park. Then you have an auto-urban commercial designation here to the north with the storage units, as well as Idaho Central Credit Union's currently in construction to the north. And I did miss, this is Cedar Veterinary Clinic here to the north as well. What the comp plan says about urban mixed, it's really just intended to provide infill development and then those adaptive reuse of those areas, close proximity to downtown. Points to a mixture of residential, limited commercial uses through the development of small urban apartments, townhomes, 2 3-story vertically mixed-use buildings. It should provide a pedestrian connection between the U of I and downtown, provide space for a variety of housing alternatives, so niche retail, restaurants, artist studios, personal and professional services. And then it does say that off-street parking should be required, but should be reduced just because of the proximity to the downtown and the U of I, and just the amount of non-motorized travel the uses could attract. Looking at the proposed, looking at the existing zoning designation in the area, you can see it encompasses those 4 zoning districts that I mentioned previously. We've got motor business here. R4 is Gormley, as well as intermingled within the residential area to the northeast. The university zoning district in gold, so those parking lots were zoned university just because of the affiliation with the university at that time. For some reason, those extended up into these apartment structures here. So that's part of the proposal, is to clean that up and rezone those R4, even though they're not part of this specific project. And then to the south, across 6th Street, urban mixed commercial, and then university and R4 down there as well. So this would be the proposed configuration. You can see eliminating motor business and the university and kind of straightening that line between central business and R4, the dividing line here. Those districts are largely remaining the same as far as the area, just straightening that line out to provide a cleaner break between the two zoning districts. So looking at the R4 zone, it's the most intense residential land use zone. It's typically intended to be applied where activity levels are high and adequate public facilities are available, and it points to the U of I and Central Business District. Adequate transportation access should be given high priority. And then looking at allowed uses, really just a wide range of residential uses, so anywhere between single family and multifamily. It allows twin homes, townhouses, and then it does allow some limited commercial services. So professional offices, those are limited to 2,000 square feet in size, and then bed and breakfast, daycare facilities, and parking lots. Going through kind of the minimum lot size, typically 5,000 square feet, and that's just single family, two family, and multifamily dwellings. Twin homes are 2,250, and townhouses, which we'll be looking at as part of this development, are a minimum of 1,800 square feet in size. And then width, 50 through the single and multi, 25 for twin homes, 18 for townhouses. Brings us to the preliminary plat, being referred to as Gateway on 6th. So 27 townhouse parcels, those are proposed to range between 634 to 638 square feet in size. One R4 lot, and that's 0.37 acres in size for that lot. And then 3 central business parcels. Those are 0.2, 0.29, and another one being 0.29 acres in size. And then the access, like I mentioned before, internal courtyard also serves as emergency services access that'll be bollarded. Will just allow pedestrian, bicyclists, as well as the emergency services. So this brings us to the preliminary plat. You can see the 3 central business parcels here surround Patty's Kitchen. This would be the multifamily parcel here. And then you can see a lot of these smaller parcels, those represent the townhouse parcels. So those are 27 lots in total, but there'll be numerous groupings of those here to the northwest along the fire apparatus access road, some wrapping around here, and then others adjacent to the parking lot, and then a grouping adjacent to Gormley Park to the west. Just a closer view. And here's kind of the utility plan that was submitted as part of the proposal. So you can see the access drive for emergency services is supposed to be or intended to be a permeable pavement system with stormwater collection. So you'll see that in this darker shade. There is access onto 6th Street, but like I mentioned before, this will be bollarded and only emergency services will be able to drive through this area. Only pedestrian and bicyclists would be allowed, no automobiles. So that brings us to the PUD. So that's intended to be located on just the portion of the property that's proposed to be zoned R4. So it's just the northern 1.4 acres. There is 2 existing parking lots. Those total 0.6 acres in size. Those are intended to be included and provide parking for the PUD. And so in total, that's approximately 2 acres in size. We have the 27 townhouse dwellings, 4-story multifamily building with 18 dwelling units and the enclosed parking on the ground floor. And the intention of the PUD is that the applicant's requesting the PUD to allow for a reduction in the minimum lot size and setbacks for the townhouse lots, an increase in maximum height permitted for the 4-story multifamily building, and to permit the townhouse lots to have frontage on an internal courtyard, which also serves as the emergency service access. So typically, every lot you create within the city is required to have a certain amount of frontage on a public street right away, unless they go through the PUD process, and that's one component of the request, is to have frontage on, or a portion of the lots have frontage on the emergency services access drive. Looking at the townhouse lots, and these are, the applicant's still working with the footprint of the dwellings, and this could shift slightly between preliminary and final PUD should this be approved. They range in width from 23.8 to 28.7 feet. Proposes to have no setbacks and extend out to the property lines on all sides. And then the applicant's looking at 3 different options for floor plans and building elevations for the townhouse units. So right now A, B, and C. And so just to reiterate, kind of the standard minimum lot size for townhouses in R4 is 1,800 square feet and 18 in width. And setbacks for R4 is typically a standard 15 feet in the front, 20 in the rear. Obviously a 0-foot interior side because you share the common wall. And then exterior is 8 feet. And so the applicant would be asking for a reduction in all of those requirements that are typically associated with the R4 zone. Looking at the 4-story multifamily building, it's on that 0.37 acre lot. The ground floor includes the parking garage. 18 parking spaces are within the garage. It does have bicycle storage, and there's a lobby with an elevator and stairs to the upper floors. And then the second, third, and fourth floors are practically identical. Each contains 6 dwelling units, totaling 18 units. There will be a 2-bedroom unit, so there'll be 2 of those on each floor that are 980 square feet in size, and 4 1-bedroom units that are 590 square feet in size. And then the total height of the 4th floor at the end is 48.5 feet, and the R4 zone requires a 40-foot height limitation, so that's part of the PUD request there, is to exceed that. Reviewing the PUD base density, R4 zone requires 24 units per acre as the base density. The proposed PUD has a base density of 22.5 units per acre, so no density bonuses are required or part of this project. And the total number of parking spaces required for the PUD is 80 spaces, and this is just per our standard parking requirements. Townhouses require 2 spaces per unit. 1-bedroom apartments, 1.25 spaces per unit. 2-bedroom apartments require 1.75 spaces per apartment. So 18 parking spaces provided on the ground floor, the parking garage, and then 88 spaces are proposed within the 2 existing parking lots. And there is a little bit of reconfiguring that's occurring as part of that. So that brings us to a total of 106 spaces that are being provided for the PUD. Which is in excess of 26 spaces of what they're required, since it's originally required to be 80 spaces. So this is the PUD site plan that was submitted. So it looks similar to the preliminary plat. You can see building footprints, obviously with the townhouses going out to extending out to all the property lines. Those are square in nature as well. You do see the footprint of the 4-story building on the multifamily lot. So it's just a closer view of the emergency service access drive, the internal courtyard, some landscaping on the adjacent parking lots, and then the southern portion of that development. As part of this, and I'll speak to it in a slide later on, but as part of the parkland dedication requirement, the applicants worked with the Parks and Rec Department on a proposal to extend a pathway from 6th Street through Gormley Park. And so this would be kind of a joint venture between the city and the applicant to construct this pathway, utilizing the proposed emergency services access drive as part of the park pathway. And this is still really in development, and it'll end up exiting onto Gormley Park and provide that connection between the park and ultimately 3rd Street to the north and 6th Street via that pathway. And so that is what the Parks and Rec Department has been working on. So this is an example. I won't go through all 3 ABC units, Those are in your packet, but I'll just go through the elevations of one of the units. This is a type B unit, and so this is the front elevation. Brick facade. You see some belly bands splitting up the different levels. It does have an open patio on the 3rd floor. These buildings are proposed to be 3 stories in height. Board and batten siding, so this is the rear elevation. Just kind of a side cross profile of the inside of the townhouses. And then a sample floor plan. So ground floor, you enter, there's a living room and a kitchen, 1 water closet. Then you head up to the 2nd floor. There's 2 bedrooms, a landing from the stairs, as well as a shared bathroom and laundry facilities. And then the 3rd floor, you head up the stairs and there's a bedroom. So the 3rd bedroom, a bathroom, a little nook and a landing, and then the exterior balcony to the outside. These are some renderings that were provided by the applicant. And some of these units are proposed to have single-car garages, primarily the ones that have access to the existing parking lot. Brings us to the 4-story multifamily building. This is the ground floor parking garage, so you can see the 18 parking spaces and the lobby with the elevator as well as the stairs. The entrance providing access to Lily Street here to the east, northeast. And this would just be the sample floor plan of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors. So you can see 2 2-bedroom apartments and 4 studio apartments on this level, as well as the other floors. Some of the exterior images. So this is the northwest elevation, southeast elevation, southwest, and the northeast with the garage entrance here. And then just some renderings of what the 4-story multifamily building could potentially look like. Just to review the existing street network in the area, does have direct access to 6th Street. It is a collector street in this portion of town. 2 travel lanes, designated turn lanes throughout. There are bike lanes on both sides. As part of the sewer line trunk project a year or 2 ago, a new furnishing zone with brick pavers and street trees. 8-foot wide sidewalks were recently installed, reconstructed in the area. There is existing driveway access located directly to the east of Patty's Kitchen. Right now it doesn't connect. I believe there's blocks, big concrete blocks that prevent access, but those will be removed as part of this development, and there'll be access from 6th Street using that existing driveway, and that's between Patty's and the Stacks building to the east. And then there's a secondary approach on 6th Street, and that, like I mentioned before, this is only for pedestrian and bicycle access and emergency services. It will be bollarded just because of the proximity to the intersection of Deacon and 6th. Looking at Lily, it's a local neighborhood street, 30-foot wide, parking on both sides. It does have intermittent curb sidewalk parking. And then I mentioned before the ICCU project in that southwest corner of 3rd and Lily. It's currently in the process of construction, but there is new curbing, tree lawn, sidewalks being installed on their entire frontage. So that property essentially runs about half of the block of Lily Street in this portion. And so they will be constructing all those new frontage improvements on the west side of the street for that entire length of their frontage. And then 4th Street, north-south alley. And then we have Paradise Path, like I mentioned before, that follows Paradise Creek to the southwest of the property. I did provide some recent traffic volumes in the area. Looking at 3rd Street, which is Highway 8, ITD reports as of 2019, 20,000 daily trips, and that's really just for the section between Jackson Street and then the curve heading to Line Street by the Furniture Center. As you head further west, that increases. So west of Line, it jumps up to about 24,000 daily trips. And then the Excel data you see below that is from our own traffic counters in the area. And so the most recent 6th Street is 2016 data. So we've got westbound and eastbound, and this is west of Asbury Street, so pretty much right in front of the development. 2650 westbound, 2777 eastbound in that area. And then looking at Asbury Street, this is south of 3rd Street, 1681 southbound, 1657 northbound. And then looking at Lily Street, this is from 2018 data, and fairly small, only 101 northbound trips and 119 southbound trips on Lily Street. Of course, it terminates really into the parking lot at the end, so it's not a really used street as far as through traffic. Utilities, water system, we have existing mains in Lily in the southern portion of the property. Engineering has taken a look at the 2012 comprehensive water system plan, determined it to be adequate, potable and fire flows. Sanitary sewer as well. We've got existing mains in Gormley. 2011 comprehensive sewer system plan indicates that it has the capacity to serve the development. And then the storm system, I'd hinted on this previously, but there is proposed to be a permeable paver system. And so that's the internal courtyard emergency services access drive. It collects the storm sewer, eventually conveys it to an existing 30-inch storm drain on the north side of 6th Street, and eventually to Paradise Creek. So going over the parkland dedication, net developable area is 2.49 acres. We do have central business in R4 being proposed. Those require a 9% parkland dedication requirement. So looking at the 9% of the total 2.49 acres, I come up with 9,780 square feet, or 0.22 acres in size. And then looking at the current value of $13,500 per acre equals $3,032. That'd be the fee in lieu of cost. And then, as I had mentioned before, working with the Parks and Rec Department, the applicants kind of requesting a city property owner cooperative project. It includes that pedestrian bicycle connection from 6th Street to Gormley Park parking lot. Also provided access to 3rd Street. And then the first phase would be from 6th Street to the northwest corner of the project using the cost share approach. Second phase would complete the connecting path to Gormley Park, and that'd be just at the city's expense. And then the property owner investment in the first phase would far exceed the parkland dedication requirement, would satisfy all parkland dedication requirements. And it was reviewed by Parks and Rec Commission. That occurred on June 25th of this year. And then the Pathways Commission also reviewed that and recommended in support of it, and that happened on July 14th of this year. And I would like to note Parks and Rec staff are also recommending approval of that proposal also. So Planning and Zoning Commission did conduct a public hearing, happened on July 22nd of this year. They recommended approval of the preliminary plat with the 3 conditions recommended by staff, and recommended approval of the rezone and PUD with no conditions. So staff's recommendation is that after the council conducts the public hearing in consideration of testimony received, approve the proposed zoning ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings that are read by title and published by summary, and then in accordance with the decision, adopt the P&Z's RCS document. The second action, approve the PUD for Gateway on 6th edition, and adopt P&Z's RCS document as well. And the third action, approve the preliminary plat with the 3 conditions recommended by staff, which are also included within the P&Z's recommendation and RCS document. These are coming from the engineering department. The first one's the water line tap design for the 4-story building needs to be revised to come directly from a city water main instead of a dedicated fire hydrant line, which is currently shown. All water lines from the water main to each water meter and each fire hydrant are required to be within a city easement to allow access. And then just reiterating that the access drive in the southwest of the property near the 6th and Deacon intersection just be limited to vehicle and pedestrian access only. And then adopt the P&Z's RCS document. And that concludes the presentation. I'd certainly be able to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, questions for Mike before I open up the public hearing?
I have one.
Brandy?
Can you show the map where you were talking about the access points? You said the one was east of Patty's, and you talked about Lily also, but can you point those out?
Sure.
Thank you.
I think this probably shows it the best. So this would be just the emergency service access here. This is actually the access that's east of Patty's, and it's currently constructed. So up to this point, there are some concrete blocks that are preventing access to the triangular shaped parking lot. This is Patty's here. And so it would provide access through the parking lot and eventually tying into Lily Street to the north. And you can see it, so we've got Patty's. This is actually part of the property as a remnant of the old railroad going through the area. So this is largely just gravel and dirt, but this was paved as part of the Stacks project. So this is all paving here you see at this point, and it does connect with the parking lots. There's just blocked access right now.
Okay, so the 106 vehicles that it has parking capacity for would be entering could enter from Lily and exit from Lily or from the 6th Street location? And that's it.
They'd have a few different locations. It'd be Lily Street. This is portion of the parking lot. So these parking lots currently exist, and those are, I believe 88 parking spaces. And then the multifamily building would be here. It would also provide access to the 18-space parking garage. So you would have access coming off of 6th Street to this parking lot, eventually would connect to Lily Street when you go through the parking lot. You also have access, there is an alley here, as well as this would be private property, but there is through access to Asbury Street through this development here to the east in the parking lot.
I assume there's some laser pointer action going on.
Yeah.
Marie?
Yeah.
Hang on a second, Marie. We want to get
I
this
should have
down
used
so
the
we can
mouse.
see your
Sorry.
faces and recognize you.
This would be the drive, Maureen, east of Patty's, in between Stacks and Patty's. The emergency service access drive would come in somewhere near this point, but this would provide connection all the way from 6th Street through the parking lot. We'll eventually connect to 4th Street because of the alley behind the apartment buildings here, but does connect to Lily Street. And then this is, of course, one of the existing parking lots, which has frontage on Lily Street. And then the multifamily building would be located in this area, and then the 18 spaces underneath on the ground floor would provide access via Lily Street to that building.
One of the things you stated is that there are two parking sections which are already being used by the university students. Did you say that? Did I miss that?
The two parking lots were previously used by the university and are no longer, the applicant could certainly speak to that, but they haven't been used by the university for a number of years. They've been leased to the applicant. More recently, the applicant's been, I believe, renting space within those parking lots to people who want to buy permits every year.
So it will be no longer a permit parking lot that people from the university will be using.
Nobody from the university has used those two parking lots for some time, to my knowledge. People affiliated with the university may have bought permits from Mr. Stevens to park there, but it's not a university-affiliated parking lot anymore.
Thank you. One other question. Will any of those buildings be anything but rentals? Will any of them be owner occupied?
Well, the 27 townhouse units, that's partly because of the reason they're going through the plan unit development, is that those will be fee simple ownership. So those will all be individual lots. They'll own the ground beneath those. So those all can be sold as single family dwellings, and you can get a single family mortgage on all of those 27 townhouse units. Now, the 18-unit apartment building, the applicant certainly could choose to condominiumize that, but I don't believe, you could certainly ask them what their intention is there, but I believe that's intended to be more rental housing, since it will be apartments, and the only way to divide ownership would be to condominiumize the units.
Maureen, we're going to be listening to the applicant here once I start the public hearing, so you'll get a chance to listen to what he has to say, as well as others.
Thank you, Bill.
Sandra?
Mike, that seems like a lot more traffic, and at least potential traffic going on through there. Is there, and especially with the credit union on the other end, I believe, of Lilly, are there any thoughts of putting traffic lights in there?
Where,
By Idaho Credit Union, or even at 6th? I just see a lot. I mean, it's a small area. I walk that area a lot. That seems like it's going to be a huge increase of traffic, and it's already hard to get out.
well, 3rd Street is controlled by Idaho Transportation Department, and so it's really unlikely, just because of the signalized spacing. We already have a signalized intersection at Line Street, there's one at Jackson Street. It all depends on their warrants, and in the past, they have not wanted another signalized intersection between those two intersections that I just mentioned. So it would completely be up to their authority whether or not there was any type of stop or intersection light at that intersection. I'd kind of done a little bit of an analysis. I'd gone through the traffic counts from the last couple years.
Yeah.
But I've done a little bit of analysis on just what this development for the PUD could potentially generate. Looking at 27 townhouse dwellings, looking at the ITE trip generation manual, it states about 5.86 average trips per day per dwelling unit, results in 158.22 trips. Looking at the apartment building, we've got 6.63 average trips per day. Based upon the trip generation manual, resulting in about 119 trips. So looking at the entire PUD, based upon kind of those best engineering practices for transportation planning, looking at about 277.56 trips, and just looking, assuming at the location of this development between downtown and the university, looking at the average trips, could be in a suburban area where they're coming up with these numbers, so we would assume that it'd be about a 25% reduction just based upon the location of this development, resulting in potentially about 208 trips per day. If you look at the number of trips in the vicinity, it doesn't amount to much. I mean, they would be dispersed amongst Lilly Street, 6th Street, so we could potentially see, if they were half and half, another 100 on Lilly Street and another 100 on 6th Street, which doesn't amount to very much of an increase on either of those streets. If you look at what would be permitted just right now underneath the current zones without going through a plat or a PUD process, this would just really be a fraction of the number of dwelling units they could put on this property just by right. It'd be something, looking at 2.5, 3 acres in size in an R4 zone. You're looking at about 100 dwelling units. This is only proposed to be 45 dwelling units, so it's substantially less, and 27 of these would be owner-occupied potentially with the townhouse units. So in our analysis, when consulting with the engineering department, it was really just a slight increase in potential traffic to the area, and we weren't concerned with that as staff.
Mr. Mayor? But it's not R4, correct?
Is that Ann? Is that you speaking?
Yes.
I can't see you, so I got to ask you. Okay, so Ann, what was your question?
And you were saying that would be true in an R4 by right, that number, Mike, but it's not R4, right? Because that's the proposed rezone. So I had a question. The rezone would effectively reduce the parking requirements, correct? Considering that R4 and central business zoning districts are denser and consequently have lower requirements.
It would actually increase the parking requirements. If you look at the proposed rezone, the central business area is remaining about the same. There is R4 on the property. That's the light teal color. So that, all this property is currently zoned R4. This is motor business, has the same parking requirements. The density requirements, really, there is, for R4 or for motor business, we really don't have any density maximums. It's just whether or not you can get enough parking to fit on the property. And then the university zone, we don't require off-street parking. It's just like central business in the university zone. So in the process of rezoning those to R4, we're actually putting a parking requirement on those parking lots.
Okay. Well, how about if we open the public hearing and let Mike take a rest, and if we need him back up here, we will. So with that, I will open the public hearing at 7:55. I'd like to hear from the applicant, please, and give us your name and address, sir.
My name is James L. Stevens. I go by Jim Stevens. My address is 11245 Northeast Shore Drive in Hayden. Until recently, I was a resident of Moscow and Pullman for about the last 12 years, and this is a development that we've been working on since 2005 with the city and with the university. Couple things I'd like to address right off the bat is we are trying to create a village, and those fire lanes that you see that go up through the middle and across and around, they are to make a village and make the development to be walkable. The parking lots are where they are, and they are basically away from the living units because we want it to be a pedestrian-oriented community. The 27 townhouses we call them brownstones because they are kind of a throwback to what's been used in traditional neighborhood development. What we like about it is we believe that that area needs pride of ownership. The best way to get pride of ownership is to sell property. And each one of those units is approximately 1,500 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. They are housing for the professional, for the university staff, for anybody that basically wants to be close to downtown. One of the things that kind of makes me, the hair on the back of my neck rise a little bit, is when we talk about multifamily. That tower, our goal is to have it be an over 55 community. And so, which is something that whole area is lacking. We would like to see a diversity in that area with people that own, and then an over 55 component that is close to the university. There's a thing called UBRCs, which is university-based retirement housing. We don't have that around the University of Idaho, and we don't have anything close to downtown. One of the reasons why we have the parking garage underneath as well as the elevator is to service that clientele. Our goal is not to be an infill of students. We want the diverse. We've already got students. They're all around us. One of the other things I'd like to address as far as the parking, we have 84 spaces right now that are there. So from the standpoint of influx of traffic, we are underparked, as Mike said. Our requirement would be 106. We only need 80. And once those students we will be no longer leasing to those students those parking spaces. It's actually going to be a net reduction. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Stevens before I open it to others on this public hearing? Art?
Yeah, the townhomes along the west side, the far ones are pretty distant from any parking or other access. When it comes to moving in, you're toting couches and beds and things like that. How do you envision residents getting their furniture up to the door of that far distant townhome?
All of our emergency exits, or we like to refer to them as our walkways, in front of that west is 20 feet deep or wide. Everything else is 26 by code. We have bullards that you can remove, and they'll be able to drive the furniture truck, the appliance truck, straight to the front door.
So that'd be just a temporary measure
Correct.
to allow people access?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the whole premise of this is to have all of the cars removed. This is going to be walkable. It's going to be a community. And one of the reasons, like, if you look at the B group, which is the group that's kind of across from the town, or from the tower, those are the ones that have the balconies or the open. So you actually will be able to look down and see your neighbors. And so we're really trying to provide as much connectivity as possible. And we don't want the car there.
Okay, well, Sandra?
So you had said that you're trying to not have students to go to a different clientele. Do you have a plan for not having students in there? I mean, I see parents like renting or buying it, giving it to kids, and being another influx of students there.
Well, by law, we can't discriminate. That's number one. Number two, we are planning on having on-site management. We have covenants, conditions, and restrictions that are very, very strict, and we will be administering them. One of the reasons why on the park side, as well as on the parking lot side of the townhouses, we don't have patios, because we don't want kids to think they can, be on the park and then have a party. And so what we've tried to do is social engineering as best as we can. If a parent wants to purchase it and put their son, daughter, friend, whatever in there, there's nothing we can really do about it other than make sure that we enforce the CC&Rs.
Gina?
I had a parking question for you. How do you control who parks where? Do they have a assigned spot?
Yes, they will.
Okay.
They will have assigned spots. One of the things that happens is the people that are on the park will have the parking that is closest to them, rather than, you wouldn't put them down in the bottom parking lot. So, and that's another thing that we have to monitor. That's part of the management of it.
Super, thank you.
You're welcome.
One more parking question. So to go along with that, so we have those permit lots right now, those will go away. And so we're losing any of the permit parking for people. So we're losing public parking.
Correct.
Okay.
It's all going to be private.
Right, so I just want to make sure, so we're actually, the people that do park downtown are losing parking space there.
Those people that presently rent from us now, which are basically students that are going to UI, or they are people that are renting in those apartment complexes, yes, their parking will be gone.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Stevens.
You're welcome.
If we need you, we'll get you back up here. With that, I'll open up and listen to testimony from anybody that's in favor of this. Want to come up, please state your name, and we'll give you a few minutes to speak.
Your Honor, I wanted to suggest David pull that down and see the other two comments.
That'd be a good idea. David, would you do that so we can see Maureen and Ann, please? And while we're waiting for that, well, we can still get somebody up here if they want to speak in favor of this.
That's good.
Okay, well, let me just do any general comments whatsoever from anybody in favor, or please come up here, sir, state your name and your address, and we'll give you 3 minutes and you can tell us what you think.
My name is Chuck McDonald. I live at 5185 Robinson Park Road, Moscow. I own the corner of Lilly and 3rd, and I run a used car lot there. Idaho Central's, all their traffic is coming in off of 3rd, dumping onto Lilly. We have a problem there now before they get going, and a reduction in traffic I don't think is going to happen with this going on there. And you're trying to put a lot of cars into an area that is, well, you need to go walk it. Nobody patrols it. We need the city to help us. You know, in the wintertime, your plows can't get down Lily now. So what are you going to do with 100 more people or cars going in and out? I mean, we need somebody to come down and look. I don't believe you're going to have the access off of 6th to handle those 2 parking lots. And off of Asbury, that's blocked. You can't get to those parking lots. The alley's gravel. 4th Street is gravel. There needs to be some improvements before you let this go any further. But I've been there for 25 years, and it gets worse and worse. So someone needs to take a look at it before you build more.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald.
Rusty Olps, 931 Harold Street. I'm Jim's partner on this project. I'm a co-owner in the land. To the gentleman's question about traffic, I just want to point out that those parking lots are full now. So there's not going, the increase would be the 18 underneath the apartments. Otherwise, those are, through the permit process, those are all full now. So the traffic that is there now will more or less stay the same. The difference will be the 18 additional cars, potentially, and then we're going to create the egress out of, is it Lily, Jim? Coming down.
Yeah, come on up here, sir, so everybody can hear you if you're on the microphone.
I'm Jim Stevens again. We're actually going to create an off of 6th Street, which is the east side of Patty's. Presently, there is a driveway there that's 26 feet wide, and when we put that in, along with Darrell Bingham for the Stacks complex, we planned on being able to have as you're going west on 6th, a right into the property, and as you're leaving the property, you would make a right onto 6th going west. And so we're actually going to increase the circulation by having that opened up. Presently, there is a planter across there, as well as some eco blocks to keep people from going over the planter. But as Rusty said, we are actually decreasing the number of the amount of traffic that will be in there, because it won't be for the rentals that surround us. It's only going to be dedicated to the residents of our planned unit development.
And to your point that coming off of Patty's Kitchen area there, that's blocked with cement block barriers right now, so
Correct.
nobody can get in and get out of there.
Correct.
Time, correct? Okay.
Exactly, because behind those blocks happens to be a planter with plants in it.
Okay.
And that will be removed and it will be opened up.
Okay, very good, Mr. Stevens. Now, Mr. Olps, did you get everything you wanted to say, sir?
Oh, just one last thing, just in case anybody's unclear. Those 2 parking lots currently, traffic goes in typically from the north or the east. They park and then they leave, and right now they're all funneling out of Lily Street or some other north or eastern artillery. If we open up that southern opening, everybody should be better off. It should feel like less traffic, a little more traffic perhaps on 6th Street, but it'll be dispersed instead of funneled as it is currently. When I came into this project, one of the first things I said that I think a lot of other developers would say is, gee whiz, Jim, we could have a lot more units than you have planned here. And I've come around to Jim's perspective, which is incorporating a lot more of sort of new urban ideals where you have a premium that you're putting on the longevity of a project, such as through the brick construction, as well as the pedestrian access, putting parking lots to the periphery, building infill that serves a long, useful life and doesn't have deterioration over time or ridiculous levels of density, whether those are allowed or not.
Okay, well, thank you. Are there others that would like to come up? Sir, come on up here, tell us your name and your address, and let us know what's on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Stuart Scott. I reside at 112 South Main, Moscow. I have to start out with a disclaimer that I'm afraid I'm very hard of hearing, so I may well have missed something that was covered. So please bear with me if I ask the developers an apparently dumb question. First of all, I like the concept of it being a village and the general design. My concern, or what I have missed, is something that addresses the earnestly held belief that the university parking lots will be available for residents in the new development. For instance, is the university quit claiming the property to the developers or the city? Given that we have a new president, there are financial exigencies. Is Scott going to say in future, that's a heck of a place, I can do something with that? So I'm only interested in the very sharp-pointed question of how do we guarantee that in future the parking which you've relied upon in your plan will continue to be available and within your purview. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Before we get it, I'm going to let you come back up, Mr. Stevens, after anybody else has testified. You can review that, okay? Thank you, Steve.
Jamie Hill again. I live at 814 South Jefferson. I have a number of concerns and questions about this, especially as the gentleman said with the parking spots. The traffic will stay the same, but we're not accounting for where those people who currently park there will have to go in the future. But my biggest two questions are, has anyone in the vein of being a friendly neighbor, I do like the concept, has anyone talked to Patty's? Just curious. And then my second question is those front portion, I believe somebody said they were going to be commercial spaces, and I'm just wondering if those spaces have been claimed, what kind of properties are looking to go there, and in that as well, where will the parking be for those customers?
Thank you, Jamie. One comment I'll make as the owner of Patty's Kitchen was at the neighborhood meeting when they had that earlier this year. So just a point of view that I want to make on that. Are there others that want to come up? Okay, come on up. Even though we know who you are, Victoria, you've got to, for the record, thank you.
Victoria Seaver, 121 North Lily, Moscow. So I don't want to say too much because I'm on P&Z, but I would say that Mr. McDonald's comments about issues in the area now are valid because I live on Lily off of A, and so that intersection is a concern. And I know a lot of thought goes into using off-street parking. There is so much apartments there now. There is no off-street parking, and they can't get the plows through on Lily now. So that just shows that parking is done on the streets now. So the public parking, where are they going to go if they live there? But so I just want you to remember that the street parking is not a lot. There's nothing to work with there. I had a question, and, sorry, I'm naive. I don't even have a car. But when you talk about the older population, which I think is great, I really want to see some senior living around here. What about the RVs, if they have RVs, in addition to their cars? And some of those are bigger than a slot. So I'm just curious, because I've never thought about it before. What happens when they take up two spaces or something?
I won't answer that for him, but my guess is I'm not going to have them there.
I mean, I'm just curious because I've
Yeah.
never thought about it before, because I'm always thinking in terms of student housing instead of senior housing. So I'm just curious because I don't know what you're going to do with those. if they're really big. Anyway,
Okay.
question?
Other folks want to speak before I bring Mr. Stevens back up? Okay, Mr. Stevens, would you please come up, sir, and answer those questions that were asked?
Jim Stevens. With regards to your last question about RVs, they're prohibited. It's 2 spaces per townhouse, and there's a size requirement, and if they violate our CCNRs, then we can tow them. And so that's the first thing. The second thing, in addressing the gentleman's comment about the will the university change their mind? No, they can't. They're under contract for 55 years. That's the first thing. The second thing is when we have demonstrated that we have fulfilled our commitment to the university of building this type of project, then we will be able to purchase those lots instead of lease them for 55 years.
Okay, I think that answered pretty much all the questions.
The one other one was, what about the displaced parking that currently uses those lots, and would that overwhelm the rest of the parking in the area?
Well, the problem is we have opened up those lots to the surrounding apartment dwellers. They never had rights to those in the beginning. They were always, before we leased it from the university, it was university controlled, and you had to be a student at UI in order to use those parking. We're the ones that opened it up when we, in our development process, because of a recession and just changes in the marketplace, it was a way for us to defray some of our costs by leasing them to the local residents. They never had a right to them in the beginning. And that's one of the reasons why we've stated the fact that we will actually be reducing the amount of traffic in there, because we're, as Mike said, we're going to really underdevelop the area. And then the other thing is we're also overparked as it is by 26 spaces.
That's correct. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Did you have a question?
Well, there
for
was
him?
one other that Jamie asked about, parking for the commercial buildings.
By zoning requirements in central business, we don't have to provide any. Yet, that's one of the reasons why we have those extra 26 spaces, so that we will be able to supply some parking to those units. And then the other thing, those 3 front parcels are slated for commercial. By zoning, they have to have commercial on the frontage of 6th Street. So they will have, in this economic climate, those are going to be the last things we're going to develop right now, because we're waiting to see how much commercial that we will be able to put in there that will be viable. But it will have commercial on all the frontage on 6th Street. And then the other question was, what about Patty's Kitchen? We have made multiple offers to have Gerardo to join our force and do an integrated development, to the point that we actually got all the way through design, and then he decided he didn't want to do it. So we haven't had any, we want to move ahead, and the market is a good time to do it, and so, and he's decided that he wants to be an island, so we don't have anything, we can't do anything about that.
And
Ann, I'll come to you next, Maureen. Ann, go ahead and go, please.
Thank you. Yeah, there was one more element of that that wasn't addressed, and it was where the parking would be for those commercial spaces.
It would be down in the south lot. So there's 2 lots, there's one up above and one below, and it would be the tip of the south lot, which would be basically on 6th Street.
Okay, thank you.
Maureen?
So I'm not sure this is a question specifically with respect to the developer. It's more a question with respect to the city, which seems to keep coming up, which is what is going to happen to those people who are already using that space. We have parking issues in the city, and so changing that parking lot, and this is reflection on the developer, but changing that from its current use to being used by tenants makes sense for the developer. My question as a member of the city is, where do those people who currently have cars that are parking on that lot, where are they going to go, and how is that going to affect the residential area
And you're correct, Maureen, that is something that the developer of that doesn't really have to answer because it really is not his concern. So what I think I'll do is I will go ahead and close the public hearing and we'll have that conversation. If we need to bring Mike up, we will. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. I'm going to close the public hearing at 8:20. And I'll turn it over to council. Mike, would you come up for a minute, please? And explain, because there's land rights for folks, and kind of explain that situation there. Folks, the way I understand it, these folks that are renting or leasing a lot to park a car or a vehicle, and then when that's terminated, where are they going to park? But that is not necessarily the developer's issue with this. So, with that being said.
Yeah, correct. I mean, there's no obligation that the developer continue to rent to the people that were purchasing permits. You know, the university obviously sold permits to students for a number of years, which has, you know, since been displaced, I assume, with the university parking system and some of their other lots. But yeah, the developer is certainly under no obligation to continue to provide open public parking via a permit system that he's currently doing over the last few years. Those apartment complexes in that area at the time should have provided off-street parking for their residents of, you know, tenants of their buildings. And there's a certain amount of spillover that's happened just because of the density that's occurred in the area, I would assume. Probably just because of the location between downtown and the university and being able to find the cheapest parking close to the university. So
I have another question for you, Mike, because I know during the comment period, these public hearings are posted down in that area. So those folks are around that adjoining area received notices of the public hearing, both for planning and zoning as well as this meeting this evening. Wouldn't that be correct?
correct.
So if you were somebody that were leasing one of those spots, therefore you'd probably very well know about the meeting that happened with planning and zoning as well as this one, through that type of communication. Would that be correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Randy?
It's just a little unfortunate, just the way the timing went, but the hearings were in July, where if these are, I'm not familiar with these apartments, but if they're student occupied, very good chance that they weren't here to know about those meetings, to attend, but that's just an aside. And I think as far as 100%, it's not the developer's problem what happens with the others. I think the question more, what Maureen was saying is, what is the city or our responsibility to think about the domino effects? I think this project looks really great, and I love the concept and the approach and the philosophy behind it with the pedestrian, the meeting different generational needs in our community. I think this is a good discussion because we do need to think about, while it's not the developer's responsibility, we know that those cars are going to have to go somewhere else, and we need to be aware that this decision has these consequences. And I don't know where they go, and I'm wondering, when they were first built, was there adequate parking created for those initial apartments that we're talking about now?
If I may, Your Honor.
Yes, go ahead, Gary.
Mike, a statement was made that the proposed development is actually less dense than it could be used by right. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm just trying to illustrate the point that if the developer came in, if it's appropriately zoned and made the development as dense as is allowed by our current zone, then the city would have no basis for denying that development because it's already zoned appropriately, so on and so forth. So, as has been stated by everybody up here, The developer is not responsible to provide parking for previous developments. We see it all over the city. You go into a subdivision where there are no sidewalks, or there are no curbs, or the street is not paved, because at the time that those developments were constructed, those were not the city standards. So as we've improved standards, people have indicated that we want parking, so on and so forth. Our standards have evolved. Yet the city does not have the ability to go back, take one of those previously permitted appropriately apartment houses and say, okay, apartment owner, you need to go out and find some more parking because you're spilling out into the streets.
Right.
So certainly appreciate the discussion, but I don't know that we have the right to be able to say, this developer needs to find out how those people are going to be parking.
There was another point, too, earlier, and when Mike did his presentation, he spoke to us that this would actually, by the rezone, we've got 3 actions for the council, in front of the council. One is the rezone, of course, and the PUD, and then the preliminary plat. However, with this rezone, as you stated earlier when you did your presentation, Mike, this would actually ask for more parking than what is currently there now. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make, Gina.
There are 3 gigantic things I like about this, this idea and this development idea. Number 1 is it aligns very well with our walkable and bikeable, or wikeable and balkable, depending how you say that. The walkability, the bikeability, the closeness to downtown, I love this. It aligns exactly with our wishes as a walkable, bikeable community. I think in my research and through our housing study in my day job, the mixed ages potential is a very positive idea, in that there's just so many benefits, health-wise and development-wise, to both ends of that age spectrum, that I can't overestimate the positive impact. I think, too, that was one of the things that was found in the housing study, was that we definitely needed senior housing as well. And I think this answers it. I hear the parking bell ringing, but it's not for this hearing.
I think there could, if this vision is successfully achieved, I could believe that it's possible that there are fewer trips than we're seeing from those cars that are currently using their lots. If those are students or people that are buying those lots and don't live there, they may be those people that, I can't imagine doing 5 trips a day, but they may be those people that are doing 5 trips a day, and perhaps the people that are choosing to live here, and it really, because of the location and the proximity and the pedestrian focus of it, are not people that are going to be doing 5 trips in a day. So, potentially, I could see there being a reduction in the amount of vehicles going in and out of those exact same lots, which we know it's the same number of cars, but the frequency that they're moved may be reduced. This is really not for, again, not the developer's problem, but I also wonder, and I would like to see us talk about at some point, what is the city's responsibility, or what can the city do to go down there and look at this situation the way it is now? Not as a part of our decision right now, but it sounds, we've heard from enough people that, the conditions are bad, the plows have a hard time already as it is, and there's gravel roads and unimproved roads and parking lots that get cut through, and that's right now. So I sympathize with the idea of this is not going to make any of that any better. And it is a separate issue than what we're deciding right now, but I would like to see that somehow addressed and not go away in this whole process, because that problem, if it exists now, it's not going away.
Well, that problem, even though it may exist, is not really part of this public hearing.
Yep.
But a very valid point, Brandy.
Maureen's got.
Maureen.
Bill, I want to make sure that the developer knows that I agree with everything that Gina said in terms of the value of this development and the thought that went into it and how it really works well for our vision of the city. And so it's unfortunate that you got caught up in the parking issues, which are separate and distinct, and they have nothing to really do, but the conversation led us into that. But I do not want you to think that that is enough for me to say it has nothing to do with my liking of your proposal and appreciation of you spending years, 15 years to come here. So thank you.
Ann?
I would speak. Yeah, I agree with that. And I appreciate the vision. I hate to say, I see a lot of parallels between this idea and what we've seen play out at Identity. And I think there's a different concept there, but in terms of the sort of utopic vision of what that could look like, community-centered housing, and I get it, there are different aging or different populations that you're trying to appeal to, and but I see some of the potential issues, and I think we've all on the council seen some of the fallout from that, from there not being enough to meet the demand there and how that affects other residential areas. And so I just have concerns when we're talking about some of the problems that we're already seeing, the fact that this could very likely, depending on how it plays out, exacerbate them.
Okay, Gina?
I hear you, Ann. I completely, when they put the pictures up initially, I thought, oh man, that looks similar. I think the difference here, and I'm looking at the two, well, one local guy, the owners are local this time. We can see them. We can find you. And we can help you make this what you're hoping it is going to be.
Your Honor, if I may.
Gary?
Mike, if I recollect, Identity was given a reduced parking requirement by planning and zoning. Is that not correct?
Correct, Gary. Yeah, Identity was given approximately 50% parking reduction from what the normal parking requirements would be for mitigation efforts that they have done to electric car share vehicles and a substantial number of bicycle parking spaces and facilities, which they ended up following through with. And we did, have some issues the first year. I think a lot of that had to deal with just conveyance of those lack of parking spaces on site to prospective tenants. And so, the situation seemed to have resolved itself over the last semester as word got out that there is a restricted number of parking space on that property. So we haven't had near as many issues as we initially encountered with adjacent properties and then the adjacent neighborhood with just overflow of their tenant parking. But that is the distinction, is they were given a substantial reduction in parking, 50% of what would normally be required. The developer here is proposing to increase what's required as far as the number of parking spaces. And so, I mean, that would be the clear distinction to me.
Yeah, and I understand that completely. I guess when I say there are parallels, I think that there are unique distinctions to this site, and that there already seems to be a parking problem where there didn't seem to be one there. And then you have the entrance and exits and the traffic counts that we're looking at already that are quite high, and that those are really well traversed corridors that are already hard to enter. And so that's where I see the potential just for some ongoing issues if this doesn't play out how it's being proposed.
Art? Well, to back off the parking a bit, I like the way that the zoning is looking for this in terms of cleaning up a hodgepodge of outdated and poorly thought out zoning. So it resolves a lot of issues there and makes the whole area more coherent and responsive to the needs of the city. Infill, which is what is being proposed here, needs to be higher density to avoid the city spreading and sprawling out around its edges. So this goes way towards using otherwise non-developed land and putting it to much better purpose. I really like the pathway concept and connecting eventually 6th Street and 3rd Street along the edge of Gormley Park. I think that'll be an excellent addition to the community and an addition to the pathways that we've got going here in town. I definitely don't think that this development is in any way similar to the Identity development in that Mike has pointed out that it's providing more parking than is required. The density is less than what it could be by right. And Identity, with its reduction in parking requirements, did create a big mess, and I don't see that happening here. Also, the fact that it's aimed for a more permanent populace, I think lends itself to fewer trips. People will park the car and then walk or bike to where they're going because you're in such close proximity to destinations. So I see actually fewer trips hitting the roads in that area than exists now with the parking lots with people in coming and going each day, potentially several times over. So overall, I think it's a good concept, a good development, and I really like it for all three aspects, the zoning, the PUD, and the plat.
Mayor?
Randy?
I would just point out one other thing that to me stands out as very different than identity is the ownership piece of this, which makes the whole project very different to me. I mean, the one 4-story unit is not, but all those townhomes with the goal of those being owner occupied and, you know, potentially these small that have I don't know what the prices will be, but, you know, it's different than what we have. So it can help to round out some other options as far as the whole housing stock that we have here in Moscow. So the owner occupied makes it very different than identity in my mind. And I appreciated the vision or discussion of really it's adding the 18 spaces, 18 more than are currently using the one ingress and egress and creating a second ingress and egress. So for that reason, I also think it's quite different than identity and does not pose as much of a parking per se. To me, it's not the parking issue so much as the condition of that narrow congested street right now, which again is not the developer's problem, but I think it is something that we need to take on later and as a part of if we decide to move on with this.
And one other part is the contemplated on-site management of people to keep after the CCNRs, because CCNRs can be very effective in the way that a development functions, but you need somebody who's relatively activist to be on top of it all the time to make sure that the strictures of the CCNRs are being adhered to by all of the people all of the time. Otherwise, you wind up with kind of mayhem. So if the developers can keep things on the rails with the CCNRs, I feel a lot better about the way the development would work.
Gina? Did you have something? Okay.
I was laughing.
Okay, Ann.
Yeah, I guess one more question maybe. We are talking about how it could be denser by right, but there are two requests, one for no setbacks and one for the apartment to be taller than our standards by nearly 20%. Can the applicant please speak to that, or Mike, whoever's more appropriate?
Mike, would you speak to that?
Well, just with the number of units that could be potentially built on the property, if you're looking at an R4 zone and you built 3-4-story apartment buildings, it would be a substantial increase in the number of units on that property than just single-family dwellings that are townhouses that are 3 stories in height, but they're one dwelling unit. I mean, the reduction in the lot sizes are just to account for the small townhouse units that have a small footprint. Those could be increased to meet those requirements. They could go out into the fire lane, but the applicant's chosen not to do that, to keep the fire lane separate, and just to apply for a PUD to reduce the lot size and width and the setbacks of those lots. So they could essentially keep the lot as one whole property and meet those setback requirements and still fit, you know, a ton of apartment units on that property. Instead, they've chosen to divide it up into fee simple ownership of individual lots, and part of that is the smaller lot sizes with no setbacks in order to accommodate the fee simple ownership.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, Gina?
Your Honor, I move that we approve the rezone.
Second.
If I may,
Hang on a second, Gary. I'm writing this down so I don't forget who made the motion second. Okay, now I'll let you speak.
okay, I missed this when we put the agenda together. The proposed action recommended by staff is approve the rezone ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and that the ordinance be read by title and published by summary. I apologize.
Do you want to repeat that to me, and I'll repeat it back like marriage vows?
You can merely say so moved.
So moved.
And that is okay with the seconder?
You bet.
Okay. So the motion is to approve the rezone under the suspensions of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and it be passed by title only. Is that what
By
you said?
title only and published by summary, Your
Published
Honor.
by summary. So everybody understand the motion? I will start to roll with Maureen.
Aye.
Ann.
Before I vote, I just want to say I appreciate the applicant's imaginative use of this property. If it passes, I hope that the on-site management actually comes through and that we do see that owner-occupied rate for that neighborhood. But all that said, for me, it's a nay.
It's a no or a yes? I didn't understand.
No, it's a no.
Okay. Brandy.
Is this just the rezone?
This is the reason, we got 3
okay.
actions we have to do. Before
All
we
right,
could
got
do
it. Yep.
2 of the actions, we have
I
to
just
have
want
a
to make sure.
rezone.
Aye.
Okay. Art.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
And Sandra.
Aye.
Okay, so the rezone passed 5-1. Now, the next thing is to look at the PUD process.
Actually, we've got to adopt the
Oh.
Planning and Zoning Commission's reason
And
statement
the
of
ordinance
relevant
needs to be
criteria.
read, Your Honor.
Pardon me?
The title of the ordinance needs to be read as well.
Oh, that's correct. Well, we are adopting the reason statements there. Okay, this is ordinance number 2020-09, an ordinance of the city of Moscow, Idaho, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for the zoning of approximately 1.08 acres of property described in section 1, property 1, as central business, CB, providing for the zoning of approximately 2.37 acres of property described in section 1, property 2, as multifamily residential, R4, providing for the zoning of approximately 0.05 acres of property described in section 1, property 3, as motor business, MB, providing that the provisions of this ordinance be deemed severable, providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and publication according to law. Now, we will go in, and we are accepting let's see, the reason statement of relevant criteria, consideration for planning and zoning. Is that what you said, Art?
Yes, I would move to adopt the Planning and Zoning Commission's reasoned statement of relevant criteria.
Okay, Art made that motion. that
Second.
move. Is that a second by you, Gina?
Yes.
Okay. Does everybody understand that? From that motion, we're going to take the reasoned statement of relevant criteria from the planning and zoning. I will start to roll with Brandy,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Art,
Aye.
Maureen? Maureen? Uh-oh, something happened to her.
Frozen.
I'll go with Ann. Ann?
Nay.
Okay.
Aye.
I think Maureen's back.
Maureen, you back with us?
No, I'm there. I'm saying yes.
Okay, very good, thank you. That took a little bit. You were stationary there, so I'm glad you weren't froze out. Okay, now we'll move on to the PUD discussion.
Yeah, I would like to say one thing about this too before, with this PUD, when I think about the by right ability to have more on there, I think it's always scary doing something dense like this, and what are the impacts going to be? And I know I have some of those concerns too, but I can't imagine any scenario that someone is going to have put in the time and the thought to have something that is not packed with higher density that they are permitted to do. So I just think we shouldn't pass up on this opportunity, because then what is going to come next? And I just find it hard to imagine a more thoughtful proposal than this.
Okay, so we are making a motion, or we just wanted to chit chat about it? Or
Sure.
what are you doing?
I will make the motion to
Okay.
approve the PUD for the Gateway on 6th edition.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Brandy and a second by Gina to approve the PUD for Gateway on 6th Avenue, or edition, on 6th edition, I'm sorry about that. I will start the roll with Maureen.
Aye.
Ann,
Nay.
Sandra,
Nay.
Gina,
Aye.
Art,
Aye.
and Brandy.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, now let's see here. Do we have to have another thing on adopting the Planning and Zoning Commission's recent statement?
I move we adopt Planning and Zoning Commission's reasoned statement of relevant criteria relative to this PUD.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Art and a second by Gina to accept and adopt the Planning and Zoning Commission's reasoned statement of relevant criteria for the PUD. I'll start with Brandy,
Aye.
Sandra,
Nay.
Gina,
Aye.
Art,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
and Ann.
Nay.
Okay, that passes 4-2. Now, we have the third action was the preliminary plot with 3 conditions.
I move approval of the Gateway on 6th edition preliminary plat with the 3 conditions recommended by staff.
Second. Good God.
Okay, we got a motion by Art and a second by Gina to adapt the 3, or the, gee, Merry Christmas, long evening, we still got a lot to go. To approve the preliminary plat and adopt the Planning and Zoning Commission reasoned statement of relevant criteria with 3 conditions. Would that be correct, Arthur?
That would be.
And would that be correct for the seconder, Gina?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll start with Brandy,
Aye.
Sandra,
Nay.
Gina,
Aye.
Art,
Aye.
Ann,
Nay.
and Maureen.
Aye.
Okay, so that went past 4-2 as well, and so we are, looks like we're done with that one, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mike, for the great
Well, we've
presentation.
got to
We
do
need the
the
relevant-
planning and zoning
Yeah.
relevant criteria.
We put that in the motion.
Included in the
Yeah.
last motion, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, it was
It
included,
actually
Art.
was.
Just combine them.
I combined it.
Well, how clever of you.
And you approved that, because I asked you, you were the motioner, so I slipped that right in there, Art. To save us a few moments of language. Okay, well, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, you've got, this is passed and is moving forward, so thank you very much. Now, we will move on to item number 7. Thank you, Mike. Item number 7, which is public hearing, community development block grant application. We've got Elisa Anderson with us this evening. Hello, Elisa.
Good evening, Mayor. How are you?
Good.
Happy to be here with you guys tonight, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to let you know that Nate Sir from Engineering is also on the line with me tonight. I am going to do a brief presentation, and then Nate will talk a little bit more about the project, and then we'll move forward with the public hearing if that works.
Okay.
Normally, under the citizen participation plan that the city has adopted in the past for a community development block grant, we ask that we pass out or hand around a sign-in sheet for the public hearing. I'm going to just set it on the chair. If someone wants to sign it, they can. And I'm going to place the Perel with it. And also, too, rather than signing the sheet, if you would like to send me an email at adacoordinator@ci.moscow.id.org. Not
US.
.us.
.us, excuse me. I could also add you to the citizen input for this project. So tonight before you, we have an Idaho Community Development Block Grant, and it is going to be our first application under the Public Parks Program, which was added to their project type a couple of years ago. And tonight, we qualify under that program, or under this grant application, we qualify under the program because we are 53.7% low to moderate income. And you have to be at least 51% in order to qualify under the criteria for that grant application. The Parks Program really wants cities and counties to look at addressing issues with existing parks improvements or implementing ADA improvements. And so the project that Nate and I will present to you tonight really addresses ADA improvements. The two parks that we're looking at are Mountain View Park and then also the new Atani Park. Not Atani Park, I'm sorry, Indian Hills Park. It's hard to breathe with the mask on, you know. I'm not used to doing a lot of talking with this on. So we'll be looking at those tonight. And I also wanted to say that these parks that will be, if this grant is approved, will also assist the city in updating or meeting the fulfillments of a draft transition plan for improvements to our public parks, making sure that we have ADA accessibility in our parks. So I will move forward and let Nate present the plan, and then I will come back to you talking about the dollar amounts for the project and how the city is applying for that.
Okay, Nate.
Thank you very much, Elisa. In just a moment, thank you for having me, everyone. I'm going to share my screen with the PowerPoint presentation here. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So as Elisa mentioned, this is the Community Development Block Grant application, and this is for the public parks portion of the funding that they offer. So were two projects. Hold on. So I'm kind of excited about these projects because our capital improvement plan is relatively new. It gives us an opportunity to look forward and find projects like these that do have similarities, aggregate them, and then go after a larger grant like a community development block grant. So it's really exciting, you know, for me to have this happen for the first time. And in this, the funding source, the public parks portion, one of their priorities is to increase access in public parks. And as Elisa mentioned, you know, we selected 4 separate projects, and they were all located in either Mountain View Park or Indian Hills Park. And for the construction timeline, if approved, these would be designed this fall and winter and would be constructed in the spring of 2021. So the nice thing about this grant is it has a relatively quick turnaround. You don't see a lot of cost escalation like you see with some of the other projects. So just to give a brief overview of what's proposed for this, we'll start with Indian Hills Park. This is proposing to install an accessible bathroom and an ADA off-street parking space. Here you can see a picture of the park facility. And if you go one further, we'll look at the conceptual plan that was prepared for us by the design professionals. And if you look at a top-down view of the park, we're almost starting to look like some of that. So we're starting to fill in some of the gaps in this thing. And this would be another piece of that conceptual plan that would be checked off. So that would be excellent. And you can see here in red is a concrete pad. This would provide for the future installation of some benches, trash cans, bicycle parking, things like that. Shown in blue is the restroom structure, and then running off of the restroom structure, just the services that would be necessary to operate that. On the south side here, you can see the ADA compliant parking space that would be installed with this project, and I'll look at that a little bit more detail in a couple of slides. A quick picture to give an idea of where this would present. This is looking south, so this would be the side of the parking or side of the playground area that would be abutted by that concrete pad that I pointed out, and the bathroom would be located here off to the left of your screen. So you can see here, this is a more detailed view of the compliant parking space that would be proposed off the street. We'd simply utilize the green strip area and provide a pull-in parking spot that could serve vehicles of various different configurations depending on how they offload. And then that would be connected to the existing compliant pathway through a curb ramp here on the right side of your screen. On the Mountain View Park here is it's a little bit wider spread out of the project, so it's hard to zoom in a little bit, but this is also looking south. So you can see here you have the northern parking lot, the basketball courts, and then the southern parking lot. And the proposed path would connect all of these features, and we'll look at that future in a few slides in the future. The connector pathway would also include a bathroom remodel. So you can see a top-down view of this. It would be revamping some of the parking spaces in the north parking lot to meet compliance, providing a connected compliant path that would also wrap in the basketball courts. And then with a slight adjustment to the compliant parking spaces on this, we would be able to create a pathway to the bathroom, which would be also remodeled. And essentially we could wrap in this entire facility in with a single pathway here. So the proposed cost for this, this is an estimate that comes from the engineering department, proposing a cost of $65,000 for the path at Mountain View, $60,000 for the bathroom retrofit, and $150,000 for the Indian Hills bathroom and accessible parking space. So this is the grant total for this section of the grant is a maximum of $225,000. So we would be required to come up with $50,000 in cash. And on top of that, we could add our in-kind donations in the form of grant administration and design services. So if there are any project questions, I'll answer those now. And if not, I'll turn it over to Elisa.
Questions for Nate before I turn it back over to Lisa from anybody? Maureen.
Can you talk about the bathroom renovations and the bathroom installations? In part, I'll be very direct. There's a lot of discussion that we've been having with respect to making sure that particularly an ADA accessible bathroom that is also, is it a single stall bathroom that you're putting in at Indian Hills?
Yes, it is. It would be, so it is a precast concrete structure is what we're proposing. We'd be using, working with David Schott, the Parks Director, to propose some of the more decorative design options that they have on those. So it wouldn't be just your basic, gray or brown concrete structure.
Actually, I just want to be clear, just so I'm not feeling like I'm running around the bush on you, that people are concerned about seeing whether or not have some gender neutral bathrooms. And one way to do that is by a single unit that is family friendly to anyone who wants to use it. And so that meets it. That's really where it comes from. And is there any chance that the renovation at Mountain View come anywhere close to providing that?
My understanding of the available renovation is that wouldn't really be possible given the current structure. So we're not proposing a complete rebuild. It's just a relocation of fixtures and partitions and things that are providing access hindrance at this point. I believe that is an available option without a much more intensive treatment of that bathroom. But that's something I can discuss with Elisa and David.
Thank you.
Ann.
Nice work, Nate and Elisa. And I've been so grateful. I know I'm not alone, but for parks this year. I thought I had been to all of them in the city, and then I went jogging and came upon Llewellyn, Almond, Asbury Park, which I think I got in the correct order. But I got really excited about this. I watched this on the Public Works Finance meeting and then immediately emailed former Councilor Catherine Bonzo, letting her know that at least one more park would have a bathroom because she was such a strong advocate for them. And so I just think it's such a great addition to these really fantastic facilities. And so nice work on this project. And I'm excited to see all of those improvements, including the new bathroom being installed.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, I guess we'll turn it up. You got a question for Nate as well?
Well, no, just an observation. I really like the connector pathway at Mountain View. I have been that mother trying to get a dirty, slimy kid across that bridge, and they're always messing around. So it is a very awesome moment, and I wish you'd have done it 20 years ago when my kids were small enough. So, but I think it's a really good idea. And Restrooms are good. I'm just thrilled we're doing this. I really think that's important, especially Indian Hills. It is kind of, it's surrounded by, or on a couple sides, surrounded by residences and stuff, but it feels a little bit isolated too. And, you know, what do you do when you have a 4-year-old that has to go? So I think this is great.
Elisa?
Yes, so as Nate said, total project costs are estimated at $275,000. We are doing the engineering in-house, engineering and inspection in-house, so that will save us. The project would be subject to Davis-Bacon wages. And one thing that Nate had said that I just need to correct, that I didn't clearly explain in my staff report, was that the grant administration is part of the match, and so the city would really only need to come up with $27,500, and then the grant administration, because I'm certified through the Department of Commerce, is an in-kind contribution of $22,500. So that saves us also. So what we're proposing tonight is approval to submit the grant application, and then that goes along with anything that anyone wants to give us input on through the public hearing process.
Yep, and of course, we have to have a public hearing process. So I think for what it's worth, I think that's what we will start right now. I am going to open the public hearing at exactly 9 o'clock. So if there's anybody out there that would like to discuss our community development block grant, please come up, state your name, and I'll give you 3 minutes for this exciting process. And so I will close it at 9 o'clock and 30 seconds. And so now I'll turn it, and I seen you had your hand up, so I'll ask you.
If I may, I was going to make a motion.
Okay.
And sorry, I'm just having a little bit of a hard time with my agenda loading. I was going to move that we approve submittal of an Idaho Community Development Block Grant application for the Mountain View Park and Indian Hills Park ADA access projects to the Idaho Department of Commerce.
Second.
Was that you, Sandra?
It was.
Okay, we've got a motion by Ann and a second by Sandra to approve the submittal of the Idaho Community Development Block Grant application for Mountain View Park and Indian Hills Park ADA access projects to the Idaho Department of Commerce. I will start with Brandy.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
Arthur.
Aye.
Ann.
Aye.
And Maureen.
Aye.
Okay, very good. So consider that, move forward with that grant application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Very
Just a
much.
last comment, if anyone that's watching tonight would like to submit an email to me in support of the application, or anyone here would like to share that, please do. It helps us support our grant application and makes it stronger. So again, ADA coordinator at ci.moscow.id.us. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're continuing our marathon of public hearings with Gary Reedner. Public hearing, open the budget fiscal year 2019-2020. Gary, you have got the podium, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. The open budget process is in accordance with Idaho code. It provides flexibility to cities and counties when things happen during a budget year. When you set a budget that takes effect, you develop it over a year before the final payment is made in a budget year, and certain things come up. Things like the thing Elisa and Nate were just talking about, grants, projects, purchasing buildings, things like that, that weren't expected, but opportunities present themselves in more often a time frame than every 12 months. So, Idaho Code 50-1003 allows the city, following the same process that we do for the annual appropriation ordinance, to make adjustments throughout the year to adjust appropriations either from revenues or appropriations for spending. And our process in the city of Moscow has been, if an opportunity presents itself, we put together a financial plan, we look at the potential for performing the project, come in, advise city council, and if council decides to move forward with it, then we ask council to approve the either accepting the revenues or authorizing the expenditures, and that pre-approving, if you will, the open budget process where we will bring the amendment of the appropriation to you. And as you will look in the memo and in the budget revision detail throughout this, council approved each one of these things throughout the year. The first is the EMSI project where funds were the state's opportunity fund. The city obligated to, as milestones in the project were reached, that we would disperse up to $300,000 to EMSI to aid them in the public improvement part of their development, which we will then get reimbursed by the state of Idaho. So that was not anticipated when we prepared the FY 2020 budget. So that is the first thing in the open budget process. Secondly, is a matter of convenience, if you will, or housekeeping. Our construction projects typically don't stop on September 30th and then start a new budget year on October 1st. So some of them, they're in progress. We're laying asphalt bridging budget years, and sometimes it involves spending from last year in the upcoming year. So that is the second thing, an asphalt patching project in the amount of $27,000. The fleet fund, you'll recall there was an almost $400,000 expenditure that was approved for a jet vac truck. Again, it was an opportunity that presented itself. The jet vac truck that we had, you'll recall, was down for several months. It had a bad engine in it, and we were having to rent one in order to meet our obligations. So it made sense for us to accelerate the purchase of that jet vac, and council approved that as well. Body-worn cameras, council just approved that expenditure 2 council meetings ago. That was something that we brought forward to council at the request of the police chief. Council approved that, and we are in the process right now of ordering those body cameras. That's in the amount of, I can't even remember. I'll get here in just a second. $90,000 and $11,425 for professional services. Additionally, we also had other information systems come forward, and that is we have been granted an allocation of CARES Act funding to purchase equipment. One of the potential uses is to purchase equipment that allows city staff to work remotely if necessary, as we did from March through approximately the 1st of June. There were some other smaller obligations, including Fire Station number 3 to fix a malfunctioning radio system and repair a sink, which had not been previously appropriated for. And then we had reimbursement on A Street from ITD. You'll recall that in order to move that project forward and construct it in a single construction season, the city had to come up with about $1.264 million in order to pre-fund the match requirement for that project. And we received those funds back this past year as well. So again, with that, those are all changes to the appropriation ordinance that was passed for fiscal year 2020. Typically in August or early September, each year we will bring you any open budget items for your perusal. As I indicated, we have to, council has to follow the same process you do for the original appropriation ordinance. So a public hearing must be held, and then the ordinance must be passed by city council. I will remind the council that all of these actions have already been approved by council in previous meetings throughout the year. So with that, Your Honor, I'd stand for any questions.
Okay, well, as Gary had said, this is no news for any of us. It's been hashed out a number of different times over this past, 8 or 9 months. So with that, I want to open the public hearing. It is 9:08. Would there be anybody that would like to come up and speak? We'll give you 3 minutes. Please state your name and your address. And with that, I will close it 9:08 and a half. And I will move on. Gina.
Your Honor, I move that we approve the open budget ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and that it be read by title and published by summary.
Second.
Ann seconded that?
Yep.
Okay, I got the second by Ann. She beat you, Art.
Good.
Okay, we got a motion by Gina and a second by Ann to approve the open budget and the suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings that be read by title and published by summary. I'll start with Brandy.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
Art.
Aye.
Ann.
Aye.
And Maureen.
Aye.
Okay, now, just for grins, folks, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess. 9:10, we'll come back at 9:15.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, did you read the?
Sorry, I gotta read the ordinance
Oh, you tease.
before we go to recess. Ordinance number 2020-10, an ordinance of the City of Moscow, Idaho, a municipal corporation of the State of Idaho, amending ordinance number 2019-09, the appropriation ordinance for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2019, and ending September 30th, 2020, to appropriate monies in the sum of $103,648,252, providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and publication according to law. Now we will take a 5-minute recess, and it's still 9:10, folks. Okay, folks, it's 9:15 and we will resume our meeting. Item number 9, resolution to extend Public Health Emergency Order 20-04. Gary, you have got the podium again.
Thank you, Your Honor. On September 2nd, 2020, Mayor Lambert issued Public Health Emergency Order 20-04. As council will recall, at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, City Council approved an ordinance and made it part of the city code, allowing the mayor to issue public health emergency orders. It's also pursuant to the Constitution in the state of Idaho that the mayor has the ability in times of emergency to issue emergency orders lasting a maximum of 7 days, after which they either expire or the council can extend them by resolution. So the mayor has done that on a couple of occasions throughout this spring because of the COVID-19 issue. Previous to that, most of the emergency orders issued by the mayor were local disaster emergency orders based upon floods, acts of nature, that sort of thing. However, with COVID-19, there have been a couple of emergency orders issued since that time. The public health emergency order in this case is one that is occasioned by the continuing COVID-19 crisis and the processes that are being put in place to protect the public, and amplified through previous public health emergency orders and resolutions by the City Council. This one was occasioned by the decision of the Moscow School District to provide a hybrid type of instruction this fall where students will be out of class learning remotely 3 days a week and be in class 2 days a week. Of course, there are others who also are able to take 100% digital learning as well. Since that time, we've been approached by several entities who've wanted to start tutoring centers or additional daycare facilities in order to help facilitate the learning of Moscow School District students and other students who are learning in Moscow schools. And a barrier to the ability to start those daycare centers or to have tutoring centers has to do with existing city code. In particular, the daycare regulations, which the city has in place, zoning regulations, and building code regulations. So in those regulations, there are several issues. The first has to do with land use. If one wishes to have a daycare in most zones in the city, it involves a conditional use permit process, which is an extensive process, usually takes about 4 months to complete. When we were approached, staff was approached, the city was approached by folks who wanted to implement additional daycare centers or tutoring centers. Moscow School District had just announced that they were going to start school on September 14th. That announcement was made about 3 weeks ago, if I recollect. Certainly less time than it would take to navigate the CUP process. Additionally, there are daycare regulations as well. Those daycare regulations have to do with background checks, CPR, have to do with ratio of adults to children, so on and so forth. And if in those situations, daycare checks are typically done by ISP, Idaho State Police, and health and welfare checks as well. Again, it takes additional time to be able to do that. One of the things that this public health emergency order addresses is the ability to bypass the CUP process on a temporary basis. And this temporary order would remain in place until January 1st. As far as daycare processes, background checks would be not so much limited as much as allowing people to start the process after having completed the local and Idaho State Police background checks. So the health and welfare background checks take up to 2 weeks, so it would allow folks to get into the market a little earlier. There are other safety regulations. For instance, a child of 13 years of age or older who lives in a daycare center or assists in a daycare center must also have a background check. That is being qualified here, that would no longer be required. However, one who is 13 years of age or older would not be allowed to be interacting with children in a daycare center without an adult present. So that provides a level of assurance as well. Outdoor play requirements are required both by the daycare ordinance and by the zoning code. That is something that the council has looked at in the past. You'll recall that there have been a couple of daycare centers that have come to the council and asked for authority to start a daycare center or expand one while having a play area that is not directly adjacent to the daycare center, or it may not have one at all. In this case, for the temporary daycare center / tutoring center, an outdoor play area would not be required. Additionally, there is 4 hours of continuing education required of daycare providers, which would not be required in this case. CPR training would be online, and the requirement for in-person CPR training would be waived at this time. That is the same authority that the state of Idaho has granted through its own daycare regulations. So, and the reason for that, in a large part, is availability. In this time of COVID, those individualized in-person trainings are not taking place, so it would be impossible to get that training during this time. So that online training, CPR training, and first aid training is what is being required. All other regulations of the zoning code would still be required. So zoning standards for loading and parking would be required. All other life safety issues remain the same. So all life safety requirements remain in place. Again, this resolution, if council decides to extend the public health emergency order 20-04, would remain in place until January 1st, 2021. That date is being proposed and was selected by the mayor because of the fact that Moscow School District hopefully will make a statement and say what they are going to do in the upcoming semester. So this allows some stability for folks to get into the business and provide these services. As you know, the biggest issue is people, if their kids are at home learning remotely, that generally means that an adult has to be there as well. So if the parent is unable to do so because of their work situation or some other situation, this would help fill that gap. So that is the proposal that is before you today, and certainly stand for any questions you might have. I will note that a couple of public comments were received. Those were both forwarded to the council in your email, and I hope I've addressed those issues in my presentation.
Oh, one thing I would just want to remind council about, the restrictions that we had for daycare or have been stricter than what the states are. And so with this emergency order, this is following state guidelines. So it's not that we're deviating from what the state of Idaho has had in place all along. Questions for Gary? Maureen?
I have a couple questions, Gary. Does that mean that the ratio for adults to children is still in force or not in force? Is that waived?
Still in force.
Okay. The other one is there, I'm kind of coming off of some of that information that was in the email that was sent around. Is there a way to put in there, while that's waived, there's an encouragement to take children out? There's lots of parks around there, and to get kids out. So just inserting that in there?
Without the ability to regulate that, that's the reason it was not put in here. There are some issues with transporting children. Some daycares actually do transport children, others do not because of the liabilities that are attendant to that. You need a vehicle, you need car seats for kids who need car seats, you need a driver with a clean driving record, you need insurance, perhaps bonding, I can't say. Being an attorney, all of those things raise their head as liability issues. And some daycares are not located in close proximity to a park, so perhaps walking isn't available either. Certainly, it can be encouraged, but without the ability to regulate it, it was not something. We could certainly add in the recitals, if the council desires it, we could add a recital in there that we encourage outdoor recreation for children whenever it's possible or reasonable.
I would like that. I will say in response to my questions, I would like that a lot. The other two that come up to me is, can we basically, based on that same thing, can we clarify or tighten the reportability of the training? Are there certain ones that says there's online training for CPR? Are there certain programs that we accept? I mean, the one that was given seemed to me like not going to be one that was going to follow, but I want some verification that people have done an online class and who's done it and is it reputable? And I think the ordinance lists two things, the American Red Cross, and those are the two. I read that, but my concern was, are those the only two that they can take?
Yeah, I would just cite, again, Idaho Department of Health and Welfare's directive in their daycare regulations that from March 1st, 2020 until December 31st, 2020, providers licensed by the state of Idaho and or participating ICCP and or enrolling in the Idaho STARS PDS registry may complete required pediatric CPR and pediatric aid using an online course. So again, that's the directive. I don't know what the, if there, I'm certain there is a registry, but I don't know that for a fact.
I mean, but is it something like a course that someone takes and they get a certificate of verification that in fact said that they've had that?
A certificate of attendance typically?
Yes, that's all I really want.
Okay.
It's a legitimate program. And there's verification that they took it. That's it. The last one is the issue of a grandfathering in, so that we have, if we've given this extension of time, would we continue that program into the next semester of school? Is that your goal? I mean, I guess my question is, are they going to be grandfathered in and just move from one semester to the next? What's going to happen at the end of this?
If they successfully complete the requirements and are meeting the requirements and have been issued the temporary license, they would have to be reissued the temporary license, but if the requirements are the same, unless there is a violation, I can't imagine it wouldn't be issued. If it was good enough for last semester, likely it would be good enough for the upcoming semester. I would note that by the terms of the resolution itself, that if someone wants to move forward and get a CUP in order to vest themselves or take the opportunity to have a continuing business beyond the temporary order, that is still open to them, and they would clearly fall in with enough time to follow that 4-month process.
Thank you.
Brandy, did you have?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions, or there's just I know, I understand the time urgency of it. However, it's a lot to work out in a quick amount of time for me. So, building off of the CPR part, I mean, I think with those online things, you don't just get a certificate of participation. Even the online portion, you have to pass. It's a test. And so I think about, just with experience from a citizen who's done them, submitting a sidewalk cafe application to the city. And there are a number of criteria that you have to provide to have that approved. You have to show maps, you have to show, multiple different things, and including with this recent expansion, you may have to demonstrate measures that you're taking to fulfill the requirements of the city. So I think with the CPR thing, if it could be that there is a process that you have to actually submit certain things that could be showing that you have passed this online CPR that's an accredited CPR course, for example. I would like to see, as we've done with other businesses with the public health department, which I know is not involved with this, but submitting a plan for how you are going to address the COVID challenges right now. The schools and the school district and the superintendent, as we all know, have been working very hard to figure out how they're going to do this in the schools. And all the teachers are on board, and they're all working on things like ventilation in addition to distancing and masks. And the masks is easy because that's a city ordinance, so that's clear. The other things are not as clear. They're putting all this effort in, and I would hate to see then these floodgates open, and meanwhile, these kids these other days are going somewhere where these same precautions are not being followed, and then they're coming back to the school, possibly working against what the school and the teachers have been working so hard to accomplish. So I would like to see that there has to be a plan that's submitted the same way that restaurants had to do to the public health department, and they provided guidelines and checklists. Here are the things I will do. You know, what with the distancing limits, I think there needs to be a certain frequency with which the kids do go outside, whether there's a playground or not, or an outdoor facility. The more we're learning about the importance of the ventilation when you're in an enclosed space we're talking about 8 hours maybe. So without knowing that there is some more clearly defined expectations and that these entities are saying, yes, I understand and I will carry these out.
Understand, those requirements are not in place for existing daycare providers. So we're talking about holding a temporary provider to a higher standard than a permanent daycare provider.
So the existing ones, are they also having some of these things? The CUP doesn't make sense, but other things waived? Like, are they during this time not required to have their 4 hours? Are they not required to do the in-person CPR if they're due for it? Are those, the existing ones, also having these measures waived?
I would suspect if they're part of a existing daycare, if you're a new employee, then you would be allowed then to do online CPR. And in fact, that was an issue that came up during the initial COVID crisis, is we had new daycare workers who were unable to get the hands-on CPR training because it just was not offered. And they were working within a daycare, and that's been I believe that the police department, Katie Short, was working with them trying to get that rectified. So yes, they would be allowed to pursue the online course as well.
Okay, so what is the significance of the health and welfare background check?
Significance?
Well, yes, so in this proposal, the state ISP and I think it was local background checks would have to happen, but the Idaho Health and Welfare could wait the 2 weeks. What information do we get from that background check that it's okay to not have for 2 weeks?
I'm sorry, I'm not qualified to answer that. All I know is that the local, of course, we check with our local court system to determine people's criminal records in the 2nd Judicial District, Latah County. ISP has a statewide. Health and welfare just goes deeper than that. And I'm not qualified to comment on what particularly it would be.
So that's why I think if we don't know what information we could potentially not know in those 2 weeks, yet we're deciding it's okay to not know, I feel a little uncomfortable with that. And with the rush also, I mean, sadly, people have been dealing with this for months with the childcare too. So I know that school is starting on September 14th. Normally it would have started by now. So that date in a way isn't that magical as far as having to have something in place on that day. I don't know how, people have been working through things in a lot of different ways, and they are continuing to do that. Whether that happens tomorrow or the 14th or the end of the month, I want to make sure we know exactly what we're getting into.
So Brandy, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Are you basically advocating that all daycare centers have to come through a procedure like the schools go through? That kind of like, what is it that we need to do to protect our kids in daycare?
No, I'm not advocating for that, but I think that the daycares that are in existence right now have been existent for a long time. They're known entities. They've been licensed. They have been getting ongoing training. They've been providers for a long time. They have been now navigating how do they function during COVID. And from what I have heard from a lot of parents with their kids in daycares over the past few months, they have put measures into place. Because probably as a business, they need to succeed, to have people want to bring their kids there, which could be said of these new places as well. But I don't know who these providers are, if they have any childhood development experience, any childcare experience whatsoever. So it's a little bit of a different comparison to me.
Sandra, did you have something?
I do, a couple things, and one is to piggyback on that, because I had a lot of those same concerns. And as someone who has spent the last 2 weeks writing a lot of cleaning protocols, when I think about a new area opening up, especially for kids, I mean, I hate to be this nitpicky, but I kind of want to know what disinfectant they're using. I want to know what they have out. I want to know what their hand washing protocol is. I want to know their spray down of dust protocol, because I mean, and like Randy said, and Maureen was alluding to also, I know that like our licensed daycares, I think they go through this, but if you're opening up, hey, I've got a business front and it's going to be great and I'm open and we can bring kids in here, well, I like that because I know there's a place for them to go. I don't want it to be at the detriment of their health either. And so what are they doing providing cleaning wise? Because it makes a big difference what you use. And I know I'm neck deep up in writing risk management things right now, so if I'm a little overboard, I apologize, but I wanted to get these things out. And then the other thing I wanted to know too, we're also calling it a tutoring facility. Are there online opportunities for kids to be tutored? And if so, I mean, we just read about that whole bombing incident in Pullman, the Zoom bombing, which was, I mean, you don't want kids to go through that. I wonder if there are any things that our daycares / tutoring facilities are thinking about in terms of how are we going to provide tutoring if it's not just a daycare, a care place, but actually is tutoring? And then what other background check things are going through also? Who's coming in to tutor and who's doing that teaching? And so I like the initial concept of it, but I think there are a lot of little things that could really spiral out of hand that make me nervous.
Speaking again about the tutoring, and sometimes too it's talked about referred to as a tutoring center and childcare. But then it also talks about granting a temporary daycare license, and I feel very uncomfortable with that. If I would feel much better with a temporary tutoring center license to not muddy the waters that we're now, these things that we up until now have felt we do in our community wants more stringent restrictions for daycares than the state requires. So just to give these mixed messages by calling these a temporary daycare license versus a tutoring center permit, a temporary tutoring center permit, or something to really clearly distinguish. This is got an end date. I think there also needs to be something in there about what happens if things go very well and school resumes to 5 days a week. Then is that immediate termination of these? Because the reason we need these is the justification of school is only 2 days a week.
It's actually valid until it expires or council decides to terminate it early. I would note that there are also, depending on the number of children that are being taken care of, a city license may not be required at all. And if I see Bill's on the line, but I think up to 5 children,
Right.
you do not need a license at all. In addition, there are things such as day camps, things like that, for a short period of time that are already allowed under the code. So in this case, we may have some people taking advantage of those exceptions that would not be regulated at all. So this was just an attempt to get some sort of regulation.
And if council takes no action, this thing just expires
Absolutely.
tomorrow. And that's all there is to it. So really, the action needs to be if you want to adopt this. Otherwise, it just dies.
So there's
And
no,
it stays
there's no
back the way it-
discussion of, I would be comfortable if we make some changes. It's just the way it is or nothing.
Right.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, then I don't need to ask any more questions.
I just had one for a thought exercise to pile on the tutoring center issue, which seems to be a different beast than daycare, childcare, things like that, in that a tutoring center implies that older students could show up there. And how does that interact with the 13-year-old restrictions?
I would defer to Bill if he's got a comment.
Your Honor.
Go ahead, Bill. Oh, he does.
Good evening. Just provide a couple clarifications. The 13-year-old requirement for background checks is only for an individual that resides in a private residence where the daycare is being provided. So it's really largely for that in-home daycare facility. The only exception we were providing here was for children that were attending the facility for essentially care or learning services would be exempted from that background check. But if you had an in-home daycare facility where there was a resident 13 years and older that didn't work at the facility, therefore they would not normally get a background check, they still would have to have that background check provided. It's just for students that are there for care, for supervision, would not be required to have that background check. And I know it's somewhat confusing, the terminology, both within the zoning code as well as the daycare regulations. The definitions of a daycare facility are fairly encompassing and fairly broad. They're that way intentionally so somebody does not call their operation a different name, but it has the substantially similar function and activity of a daycare facility where children are left for an extended period of time under another individual supervision. As Gary mentioned, there's already an exemption in the daycare regulations that summer camps, day camps, and other similar activities for up to 12 weeks in a year can occur with no licensing, no background checks, no first aid or CPR training. That's already an exemption that exists in the city's daycare regulations. This largely addresses the land use regulations that was that timing impediment for facilities to be up and operational because it may fall underneath that umbrella of a definition of a child care facility under the zoning code, even if they want to call it a tutoring or learning center. If they're leaving children in the care of other individuals for an extended period of time, it's going to be captured in that definition. And so this was just intended to try to provide the opportunity for that care to take place in this extraordinary circumstance. Those can happen for 12 weeks with none of the background safety checks, CPR training, or continuing education today under the code as it exists.
So then why do we need it? I mean,
For the land use
You
regulations.
don't unless
Largely
you
it's
are
the land
trying
use
to
regulations,
provide some
unlike-
level of safety.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Bill?
And for the land use regulations is the primary purpose. Because it would be captured as a child care facility underneath the zoning code, it would then require the conditional use permit. That was really the largest impediment that we identified. Daycare providers already can get a temporary daycare license before their background checks are fully complete. They just cannot be alone with children without having a licensed provider with them. We did want to prioritize getting the local background checks, and Katie already does that today. The health and welfare can take a little bit longer. And that's more about child protection cases, not actually criminal prosecutions. And so it's a little bit different database, but already daycare providers can work, I think, up to 60 days on a temporary license, so long as they have another licensed provider with them. But we were just trying to streamline that process. The outdoor play area is a function of the daycare license. So a few of these facilities really can locate potentially in downtown buildings like the Moose Lodge or others, where outdoor play areas would not be feasible in those locations. And so in order to provide the greatest number of locations that would be available for this service, as well as to streamline the land use approval process, that are really the primary thrusts of the resolution. But we wanted the council to be aware, there could be these types of facilities that operate underneath that 12-week day camp exemption that will not have background checks and other training and first aid training.
Okay, I guess for me, the main concern, we get the background, we can't get that going. There's online encouraging people to do it. But at least some sense that the person who's running the daycare center or tutoring centers have more kids there. For some reason, I have that vision of it because they're actually learning something, maybe potentially. I want to know that at least the city's regulations in terms of distancing and wearing masks, and even if you're at the lodge, you walk around the building 3 times an afternoon just to get outside and smell some air. I just want something, but I'm probably most concerned about making sure that while they're there in that building, that they're following safety protocols. And whether that goes in, I hear the need, and I hear there's a desire in me to say, yes, maybe there's something on that bottom thing that Bill always talks about that says, Gary always talks about, that put something in there about following safety precautions, and here are these safety precautions.
Well, I'm inclined to extend the ordinance because it provides some level of safety and some level of required checks, as opposed to having none under the current regulations where you can have a day camp or something like that, which has absolutely no control whatsoever. And so, to that extent, I'd like to see this extended as a way to provide some access, some control, as opposed to having nothing.
So what control does it give us, Art? That's my question. What control does it give us?
I didn't quite understand. What did you say, Marina? I didn't quite understand that.
I said, Art, when I'm trying to figure out, you said it gives some control. What can you define for me exactly what control you believe this ordinance gives the city?
Well, as stated by Gary, I think they have to get the CPR training. They have to adhere to the standards about the adult to child ratios. They have to work on getting the rest of the background checks running, not necessarily to open the place, but to get those background checks started with a completion date of whatever health and welfare takes, 2-3 weeks, whatever. And what we get is that, as opposed to opening a day camp for 12 weeks with absolutely no regulation whatsoever.
It does follow state guidelines too. Isn't that correct, Gary?
Yes.
But just regardless of what happens with this, it's not going to mean that the day camps, someone can't still do that.
Right.
It's not going to prevent that from
Right.
happening.
Yeah.
Which makes me think no one's interested in doing that, and it's not likely to happen. If everyone that's coming forward, no one has said, I want to do this day camp. That doesn't seem to be a real threat that these unregulated day camps are suddenly going to start popping up.
I think that having a more streamlined process in place would encourage people to do the right thing and get involved with signing up, getting the training, getting the permits, getting the background checks. So I think if we can streamline it, and as Bill pointed out, the land use regulations associated with the conditional use permit application really slows things down. If we can streamline it, I think it makes it easier for people to do the right thing, to make it more attractive to parents to send their child there than to one of the more unregulated versions.
And if I may, I can't speak as to whether people will try to do a day camp or something like that. As we indicated to administrative committee, the reason that we're moving forward with this, or the reason the mayor issued the order, is because we were approached by people who wanted to either start a daycare or start a tutoring facility in order to meet this need. So if people would take advantage of that exception and do a day camp instead, we really can't say.
Well, given all that, I want to make a motion to adopt the resolution extending the public health emergency order 20-04 until January 1st, 2021.
Second.
Was that you, Gina, that made the second?
Yep, it's my thing tonight.
Okay, we got a motion by Art and a second by Gina to adopt a resolution extending the Public Health Ordinance Order 20-04 until January 1st, 2021. I'll start the roll with Ann.
I still have a couple more things would like to say before we vote. Is that all right?
Talk,
Okay.
yeah, I got all night. I
Thank
don't
you.
care. Go ahead and
I know,
tell us
yeah.
what's on your mind.
So, I think what I feel uncomfortable with is that it does not feel appropriate at this time to be facilitating. I want to help. Of course, I know we all want to help. But to be facilitating more options without saying we have certain expectations. And I understand and I appreciate that those aren't required of the existing daycares. But if we're now this is a chance where if we're gonna take more on and actually roll back some requirements, taking more on, saying you don't have to meet what traditionally we do require, that it does not feel the time to me to do that without saying, but we do have certain expectations of you that we expect you to meet, knowing the efforts that the school is going through. That's where I'm coming from with this. But it sounds like this is not an option, but if we could work on this more, and come up with something to where we can say, yes, we want to help. We appreciate that you want to help, the people coming to the city. And we just want to see that you have a plan, that this can not be something that we look back on and say, wow, that had a lot of unintended consequences and it was a mistake.
Let me ask a
Is
question
it
in the
possible
context of.
to extend the order for like 3 weeks and then put on the stipulation that if you are applying for this, we want you to work on these other regulations? I mean, this is such a long period that it's almost like it's an all or nothing. And at this point, I'm inclined to do a little something rather than nothing at all. But if we could say, let's extend the emergency order for 1 month and work with these places that are hoping to open and say, and in order, if we're going to extend it, these are the things we expect to happen.
Well, remember, we can always terminate this anytime we feel like, and if we get something better in place, we can just terminate this one, insert new one.
Right, but I'm not anticipating getting a better one in place unless we ask people to do certain things, right? Unless we say, we understand there's a time crunch, we want to help, but we want you to have a health plan, we want you to have a disinfecting plan, we want to know if the background checks are in, we want to see that certificate. You should be able to do that in a month. And we can revisit this as a council in a month and say, great, these places did it, or they're not doing it, let's end it now.
Gina?
Didn't you just tell us, and I could be zoning off with my new granddaughter thoughts, but didn't you just tell us that we don't even require daycares right now to do that sort of thing?
No, we don't.
So we're asking more of these temporary tutoring centers than we do the existing daycare centers that they're in to start with.
Right,
So
because
aren't
the
we just
existing ones
asking-
have done things. They're certified, they have done other things. They may not have
They
these.
don't have what we're, to me, we're almost doing, we would be asking for a daycare-wide thing, because I would think it would be more thorough if we were to say, okay, tutoring centers and daycares, you all have to have these kind of things, because I would like to know my kid's in a place that has a cleaning plan, or a get everybody outside for 4 hours thing, every 4 hours. But I think, I don't know, I'm inclined to do this as something, knowing that it can't last forever. COVID can't last forever. And I would rather have some of these pieces in place and have people that are coming to us saying, we'd like to do this, what do we need to do? I just think we need to at least do this. I feel like this is important to get the message out there that we're gonna allow this in this weird time because we've got expectations. It's temporary. Thank you for doing the right thing.
Yeah, and
Maureen had something she wanted, I heard her talk
Go ahead,
earlier.
Brandon. Brandon, you can go first.
well, I was going to say, I think, I hear what you're saying too, Gina, and I think right now, what this is saying is, here are things that you don't have to do, that the other childcare centers do have to do, or have always had to do. I feel like this is saying, here's things that we're waiving, that normally you would have to do. And because we're doing that, I feel we have a responsibility to say, because we are allowing this to all happen in this rapid way, and you don't have to go through the CUP process, and you don't have to do all these other things, but we are asking you to provide us with some documentation of what your plan is and these other things. Even though the others don't have to do that, they have met all the stringent requirements that have always been in place, and these ones don't have to, so
Well,
it's.
I'd like to call the motion right now and vote it yea or nay and decide where to go from there.
Okay, Art called the
Can I ask you a
question.
question before you do that? I want to ask one question before you do that, Art. And that question is, can we actually, just let's say, we adopt this on a shorter time span and we say, give it a month or whatever it is that Sandra wanted. And the question is, and during that month, if you want to continue doing this, we want you to say at the end of the month that you can come in and put a proposal together. I guess I feel like continuing it for a month and suddenly putting restrictions on them, people will be crazy unless they walk into the process knowing that there are going to be restrictions that are coming forward in a month, which are health and safety issues.
Maureen, the motion was made and seconded, takes it through to January the 1st.
So
So-
I'll second calling the question, because I have learned that that needs to happen in order for that to stop. And then we can vote on it, and depending on how that comes out, someone else can make a different motion if this one doesn't pass. So,
Okay,
think
well,
we
if
can
that, I'll
vote then.
start with you.
did that all make sense? So I vote no.
Okay, Maureen,
I vote no.
Ann,
No.
Sandra,
No.
Gina,
Yes.
and Arthur.
Yep.
Okay, so that fails.
So someone can make a different motion if they want to, right?
If you want to, go ahead, do what you want to do.
I'm just saying that for everybody. I'm not making another motion
Well,
right
look
now.
at, I'm the mayor, I don't make motions, so, there you have it.
If I may.
I'll put one out. I mean, I guess I would like to move that we approve this emergency order for 1 month.
Give us a date.
I don't have my phone.
9th.
I do. Okay, the
When do we
next
meet?
council meeting is the 21st.
Meet on October 5th and then October 19th.
On October 5th,
The way it's written?
yes. And can I just say, that's my motion? Can I tell you the intent, or do I need to leave it at that?
It's just your motion,
Can I,
you gotta see if you get a second.
can I amend that? Can I ask you for a friendly amendment?
Well, the motion dies because there was no second, so Maureen, you've got the floor. You wanna make a different motion, you can, because that one died.
Okay, I move that we continue the temporary order until October 5th, but we inform people that, I don't know how you can do this. Gary, I'm actually looking for some help. You'll probably not want to give it to me, but here.
Well, I'll help you if I can.
I know that's what I meant. I'm not sure you can. My question is, I want to get this approved. I want more safety precautions built in. I don't want to have people come back screaming at us in a month that said, I rented the open space in the mall, and now you're coming back with all these requirements. So somehow I want to telescope out there what we want and what we're going to do and what the expectation is. We did it for a shorter period of time because we want to make sure that certain health and safety requirements are in fact met. And we've got to.
That's where I was headed also.
How do you do that, Gary? Come on, Mr.
My concerns are, and Bill's going to chime in here real quick too, but my concerns are that the action before the council tonight is to extend an emergency order that has been issued by the mayor. So doing anything to it that is significant is going to be, if it changes the intent, then you're likely going to run into some issues. Secondly, one of the things that we discussed doing was addressing this by temporary ordinance or emergency ordinance. And Bill can talk about the ramifications of approaching it from that way.
And the third thing it can do, which is, instead of trying to weave through this, because the original emergency order is not going to be followed, let it die and let the thing go and bring it back in 2 weeks to the next council meeting with whatever these things that somebody wants, safety rules or regulations or whatever that this council wants to come up with, and they can do that in an admin meeting next Monday somehow.
Could we hear from Mr. Belknap?
Bill.
Your Honor, I did just want to clarify that the only differences of the temporary facilities to a permanent facility from the daycare regulations was we were waiving the outdoor play area requirement, and then we were allowing the online CPR training that the state is doing for all daycares that the state regulates across the entire state. The background checks, currently they still we do allow all facilities to have a temporary daycare license prior to background checks being completed. So for the daycare regulations, essentially, all other requirements apply, student ratios and everything else. So we're just waiving the outdoor play area and that 4 hours of continuing education every year. And again, the 4 hours of continuing education, we're talking about something that's going to last hopefully no more than October, November, December. So we've got really 3 months that we're trying to work through. And we're just trying to facilitate these types of facilities to accommodate the community need. We are, on the land use front, we are waiving the CUP temporarily. But again, those don't address life safety considerations, as really just the suitability of a property and to allow for public comment. But really, we are imposing all of the same standards we would make any existing daycare with those few minor modifications. I do understand the council's desire to have additional safety protocols in place, but I do concur with Gary that if that's going to be the case, that should be across the board for all daycare facilities if the city wishes to do so. We did talk about the emergency ordinance. That was only going to really address the land use issue from the zoning perspective to allow those. But really the concern for an emergency ordinance that just addressed the zoning restrictions was that could potentially establish a property right that we did not want to have established during this time period.
And Bill, so if this thing dies tonight and there is no emergency order that goes forward, then those folks that want to do a daycare are going to have to go through the conditional use permit just like usual and let the cards fall whenever the cards fall to come around 45 days from now or 60 days from now. And then they'll follow that same protocol from what is in place currently, correct?
Correct.
Well, what about a motion to, the CUP part, I have no issue with. I mean, I do think that they should apply for it. They should still be required to apply for it, but it doesn't have to wait until that process is completed. Because 45 to 60 days is much less than now to January 1st. So they could still go through that process if it's determined to be problematic with the location or having a bad impact on neighbors or something. I still think that process could happen. But all other requirements are consistent with current daycares. It's just the zoning part.
And they largely are. The only thing is the outdoor play area and the continuing 4 hours of continuing education every year, which is a book report that a provider has to read a book and submit a book report. And it's really just for this 90-day time period.
Actually, maybe I come down on the side of, maybe we have all the daycares provide their plans and go in that direction. I bet most of them are.
Yeah, but the thing of
complying
it is,
and
the way this thing is wrote up, I mean, we're not changing the language of the emergency order. You either kill the thing and it dies tomorrow, a death, and if you want to change daycare regulations, all things go with it, has to come at a different time, not tonight, correct, Gary?
Exactly.
I mean, we can't go through this and wordsmith this and change this Because this is your, as it is, and it either lives or it dies.
Is there an age on daycare? Like, I don't know well enough. Is there an age like daycare is 0 to 6, or is it indefinite?
There are ratios, different ratios of daycare.
Okay.
If you have a child under the age of 2, a baby, versus a toddler versus, I don't know the exact classifications.
I mean, when we're thinking of tutoring centers, I'm wondering, I mean, does that go to like 13 or 12, or how old can they be? Because maybe down the road, if we wanted to do wordsmithing, we change it from daycare to tutoring center, take daycare out of it.
I defer to Bill on that.
Well, and the problem with that is the definition of a child care facility in zoning code includes tutoring centers, learning centers. So no matter what you call it, the definition of the zoning code already captures that use.
Okay.
As a daycare, as a child care facility in the zoning code, as a daycare facility in the daycare regulations. So unless it is a school that's providing curriculum underneath the direction of the state, there are certain exceptions that are listed in my memo. Unless you're really an accredited school or you're a relative caring for relatives' friends, relatives' children, there's a list of exceptions, and the day camp, summer camp, sports camp type activities. Those are all exempted from a daycare, but otherwise the definition of a daycare is very broad and all-inclusive. And really, I think the purpose of that, as the code is drafted, is to avoid having somebody avoid the regulations by calling themselves something when the business is essentially providing childcare.
Okay, I have to say, I'm just struggling here, and I'll just tell you personally, I'm even struggling with my decision because, in part, school starts on September 14th. Parents and all of us sitting in this room don't have little kids that are doing daycare right now. I'm assuming just looking at our ages. I could be mistaken. But my sense is that a parent needs some sense of where is my kid going to be on Monday? If they're not in school or they have Monday and Tuesday, and they have to be someplace on Wednesday and I've got to go to work, I'm struggling with where do those kids go? And parents, I would be fortunate enough to say I would find a daycare center where they implemented safety precautions, because I would walk in the door and I would grill them. Let's be really clear in terms of how they intend to provide safety for my children. But I'm not sure. And then do I impose that? But if I'm telling you, I'm just kind of mentally struggling with the need to make sure parents know what the heck they're going to do with their kid come Monday, and making sure that those kids are going to be safe and that the community is going to be safe without a bunch of kids just in there together. And I'm not sure exactly how to put those two together without knowing that they will impose some kind of safety. Do you understand what I'm saying on that, Bill?
I do. Our focus here was to facilitate providing opportunities for childcare, not to impose additional controls or restrictions. It really was to try to help facilitate the care. And parents do have that responsibility to make the choice of where they take their children and to, as you said, to review the safety protocols they have in place. But our goal here was to try to help facilitate, meet the critical need of having a location for children to go so they're not left unattended at home, that there are options available in this time period.
Mr. Mayor.
Gina?
I think there's value in this emergency order. Maybe what we're all stumbling over is the length of time. It feels like 2021 is such a, I think that this ordinance does exactly what Mr. Belknap and staff were trying to do. It meets for this crazy time. It meets in the middle between parents who are struggling to find a place for their kids and what we need to have happen. I really want to just propose this exact public health ordinance with a shorter time frame. What about?
We can't do that. Can we do that, Gina?
I'm trying to. I'm trying to.
And if I made that time period, it's 90 days and it's to get through the first semester while the school district is doing both hybrid and only online instruction. So it's intended to cover this first semester with the hopes that conditions improve, and school goes back to in-person instruction for the spring semester.
Well, I can't bring it back till January 1, can I? Because it killed it. We killed it.
Yeah, that motion's gone. It's dead. It was
So
voted
my
down.
motion
so-
has to be for the fall semester of 2020 in the Moscow School District. Do you know what that date is?
Do it until Christmas.
Yeah, it goes into
Yeah, you could
January.
propose it through December 25th if you wanted. It's the
Okay.
council's resolution.
Okay.
Well, before you make a motion, let's just see if we get some kind of sense so it doesn't automatically lose again.
Well, I'll give you my sense on that. I mean, I don't like it because of all the safety stuff. But that said, I really don't like not having anything at all. And so, it
Well,
pains me.
you
So-
do actually have something. You've got an ordinance, daycare set right now. You either like it the way it is or you don't like it the way it is. And if you like it the way it is, you don't do anything and it stays as such. And folks have to go through the normal CUP process. You start adding a bunch of safety rules and a bunch of
Yep.
different things, then you need to rewrite the daycare section. And that takes, that'll be something that's a several month process way
Yes.
after the January
And-
1st deadline.
And that's why
And
that's
so-
why I'm reluctantly saying I will change on that because I think we do need something. And we can't rewrite the law in a week at the next administrative meeting. So
Is that a second?
it's a second.
Did you say
Well,
December?
I'm not sure
December
what the
25th.
motion was.
Okay.
We're
To
gonna-
extend the emergency order until December 25th.
25th of 2020. And that's a second.
I have a question. What would happen if the school district decides they have to close because of spread? Would this would this respond to that?
It would have no effect on this.
So we could have a scenario where the school district is saying, we have too many cases, there's community spread, it is not safe for us to stay open. But
We can
now
end
we're
this,
saying,
though.
but all these other places will stay open.
But we can end this at any time,
Okay.
Yeah.
Or it dies on Christmas.
or it dies on Christmas.
Are you asking whether daycare centers would be prohibited from continuing at the same time? Is that the question?
Know how
No.
this would be affected.
I mean, to me, this still feels separate to me than daycares because we are waiving some of our normal regulations. And I know they're minor things or small things, yet they are nevertheless things that are normally have been required of our daycares.
But this is temporary, and everybody knows it's waiving temporarily what we normally require. This is a pandemic. We have to do this to meet the needs of our community.
Yeah. And
And we can end it. I mean, like you said, if things are out of control and if the school's closed, then I'm sure we'll have another emergency order of some sort. But we could end this next council meeting if we looked at it and went, oh my gosh, this is bad, this was such a big mistake, we're ending it now. So if those things snowball, we still have control to be like, no, we're done. But until then, we are allowing a little bit of help.
Right. I mean, I wish we had this conversation like 4 months ago, but, which we never would have known that we would have had to. But this, everyone's been figuring out. People that have had to go to work have not, school hasn't been, school stopped in March. Everybody has been already dealing with this all this time, and they're continuing to.
But everybody's PPP is running out and the EIDL's running out, and they're scrambling to get a $1,000 loan from PEP, and we've got to do something to help this. It is getting to the critical phase.
Ann had a comment, Your Honor.
Ann?
Oh, just that if we were to reverse it, I mean, not reverse it, but, if we were to be looking at, say, the school district decision and wanting to terminate this, where does that leave everyone who had gone through the process and maybe hasn't received their CUP or hasn't even started that process for whatever reason, even though that's sort of the expectation, even though it's not explicitly written?
Conditional use permit, could continue on if I'm correct. Is that right, Bill? If somebody wanted to fill out and do a conditional use permit while this is being done, they can do that as well. Isn't that correct?
Well, that was one of the suggestions we received, is to have people, the day that they apply, to also start the CUP process. Because if the justification is that the time that it takes to complete that is prohibitive during this time period, then that was a suggestion.
I think it's a combination of both time, money, and investment to go through the process for something that we were envisioning was a 90-day operation to address kind of an immediate need. These weren't focused really towards establishing new long-term daycare facilities. The businesses that had contacted us may be karate studios, or it was Bonkers, and they were businesses looking at trying, how can they meet the community need in the short term? So we really were not focused upon requesting that they go through the conditional use permit process to have a long-term daycare operation, when they were just looking at kind of a temporary use during this 90-day period to address the community need. If the schools had such spread that they closed, that's not going to eliminate the need for daycare within the community. Daycares have oftentimes been deemed essential businesses because people do have to continue to be able to work. So that's a future decision for the council. I would not expect we would want to, or the council may not wish to repeal the resolution, because then we're going to leave a lot of people in a very difficult position with either leaving children at home alone or having to choose between that and going to work.
And not only, to just follow up, in agreement with what you said, it not only wouldn't eliminate, it could increase the need. Yep. Certainly.
Right.
And so this does respond to if that occurs, because it does allow more rapid deployment of childcare facilities if they're necessary. If the school district would go to all online instruction, the likely need for educational support and learning support will increase, clearly.
Maureen had her hand up. Maureen?
I just have a proposal, or that is, can we change it to like December 7th or December 21st, not on a day that city council meets? So the answer is that we can then continue it if we're going to, but we can have a discussion of it. December 25th seems to me to be short. It may be a tough December 25th this year, and let's not be looking at the issue of daycare on that day. So
what's the second council meeting in December, sir?
December 21st.
And it's the 7th, 21st or the 7th, either one. 21st.
It would be my suggestion then, if you're shooting for the second council meeting, you make it the 22nd.
The day after.
So that it doesn't expire that night. You have one day.
Okay.
So is somebody make an amendment to the motion? Here's what we've got, ladies and gentlemen. Gina made a motion, Sandra seconded, to adopt a resolution extending the public health ordinance 20 days, 04, until December 25th. What I did here was Maureen was wanting to make an amendment to that motion to make it the 22nd.
Yes.
Is that correct, Maureen?
Yes.
And somebody's going to have to second that.
I'll second that.
Gina seconded that. Now we're going to have to vote on that amendment, and then we'll go back and vote on the regular one, correct?
Exactly.
So everybody got that? All we're voting on right now is the amendment to change it from a date of 25th to December 22nd. I'll start with Art.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Brandy.
No.
Okay. Ann.
Aye.
And Maureen.
Aye.
Okay, that was on the amendment. Now, so the way that this reads, it says adopt the resolution extending the public health emergency order 20 days 04 until December 22nd. That is the motion that you're going to be voting on now. And I'm going to go ahead and start the roll. And I'll start it with Sandra.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
Art.
Aye.
Brandy.
No.
Ann.
No.
And Maureen.
Aye.
Okay, so that one passed 4-2. So what you've got is you've got the adoption of the resolution extending public health emergency order 20 days 04 until December 22nd, 2020. 2 no votes. Okay, so we are going to move on to item number 10, which I'll have to look on my thing here and see what it is. Solid Waste Franchise Agreement Amendment. We got Tim Davis, are you there?
I am.
It's 10:22, you got till midnight. Because you like to talk about this, so you begin with whatever you want to tell us.
Hey, Your Honor, this is Tyler, and I'll be starting us off today, and then Tim will bring it home, and we will make this as efficient as we possibly can.
How come you're gonna start it off? Tim's the one we're interested in listening to. Just thought I'd put you on the spot.
We'll get to Tim.
Okay.
Yeah, so before you all today, we have an amendment to the solid waste franchise agreement with Lake Tahoe Sanitation. As you're aware, there has been some significant disruption to the recycling industry. It was largely precipitated by the China sword, which was some policies in China in which they quit taking much of the world's recycling. China was the largest recycling entity in the world, and they passed new policies and determined that they were no longer going to take much of the recycling. Consequently, domestically, we've been scrambling, trying to find new markets for recycling, and also build up the internal infrastructure in the country to process and deal with our recycling domestically. A lot of municipalities have responded to this in different ways. Many have dropped their recycling programs entirely. Tim and I have been working with finance administration for the last several months, trying to work through what we might do with our recycling program. We've been taking a hard look at it with our environmental services group to take a look at costs and different options, and also just looking at what we might do with LSI in order to continue with our recycling program as we start to see more stability in the recycling sector. And so in that, we came up with a proposal for how we might continue with recycling and some amendments to the contract that would reflect that. And then also, while we were doing the amendments, we took a look at a couple additional items that needed some housekeeping work. So Tim's going to run through those for us tonight in a little bit more detail, and then we'll stand for any questions you might have.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. There are 4 areas within the solid waste franchise agreement between the City of Moscow and LSI being proposed to be amended. LSI has requested financial relief from the city for revenue losses experienced from the operations at Moscow Recycling Center, as well as additional compensation for necessary extra garbage and recycling routes, resulting from a decision by City Council back in 2016 not to eliminate residential alley collection for solid waste and recycling that was proposed at that time. The amendments also remove tires and household hazardous waste disposal cost from the current miscellaneous rate. These items would be compensated as they were prior to 2013 as a direct reimbursement to LSI for actual costs. The city will also relieve LSI of the majority of recycling education duties and shift the education role in-house for efficiency and cost savings. And I'll just go down through the 4 areas. Currently, Moscow Recycling, LSI Moscow Recycling is compensated in 2 different methods. They receive a processing fee based on the tonnage that they take in at the recycling center. That fee is for baling and preparing materials that they take in for shipment. And then the second is they're able to retain revenues from the sale of those recycling commodities. And Tyler already touched on the China sword and that. During this time, staff came up with a proposal that engages the city to partner with LSI and Moscow Recycling regarding the revenues from the sales of those recycling materials, taking on a portion of the risk as well as a portion of the reward that deals with some of the volatility of these markets. And the way we did that is we found an independent index. It's called the Secondary Materials and Secondary Fiber Market Data Index. They have 6 regions, and of course we use the Pacific Northwest region to get our data. We developed a running 10-year average that runs during the current fiscal year. So it's the current fiscal year and 9 years back. And then we also develop the current year average price. So we have a 10-year average and a current fiscal year average. When the current
year average price falls below that 10-year average price, the city would compensate Moscow Recycling for 50% of their lost revenues. When the current year price exceeds that 10-year average, Moscow Recycling would share 50% of that increase in revenue with the city. At the end of each year, that would be recalculated. And we also are proposing that this formula be applied retroactively to fiscal year 2019. That would result in a payment in the amount of $98,643.84 to Moscow Recycling for revenue losses in fiscal year 19. And then obviously we'll recalculate here shortly after fiscal year 2020. And then I'll go on to the extra collection routes. In 2016, LSI responded to a request for proposal from the city of Moscow to provide single stream recycling services. Their response outlined and based costs on eliminating alley collection service for garbage and recycling and gaining efficiencies utilizing automated trucks. After sending notices to approximately 450 customers that would have been affected by these changes, there were concerns brought forward, and council ultimately decided not to eliminate the alley routes. LSI has since restructured routing 2 different times to maximize their efficiencies, but it remains necessary to run these extra routes, which average 14 hours per week. City agreed to take another look at these extra routes and costs once they were made as efficient as possible. They're requesting an additional $5,121.13 per month. And this is based on $115 an hour for a 2-man crew on a rear loader truck. And then the miscellaneous rates that we spoke about, the tire and the household hazardous waste disposal costs. When the franchise agreement was amended back in 2013, there were a number of costs, including utilities, land lease, CFC removal, appliance door removal, household hazardous waste disposal, rock for the roads, asbestos disposal, building maintenance, non-MSW excavation, tire disposal, compost screening, transfer station and equipment repairs and maintenance, which were all previously itemized each month and paid as a direct reimbursement to LSI by the city. And back then we consolidated all those into this one miscellaneous rate. Tire and household hazardous waste disposal costs allocated.
Whoop. We lost you, Tim.
I think he hit his mute button.
You
hit your
muted
mute.
yourself. Gotcha. So tires and household hazardous waste disposal costs allocated to the miscellaneous rate are no longer covering the entire cost for disposal for those 2 items. For this reason, LSI has requested that we move the disposal costs for tires and household hazardous waste disposal back to a direct reimbursement for actual costs. The costs currently allocated, the miscellaneous rate for these 2 items would then be backed out of that miscellaneous rate and paid as a direct reimbursement for actual costs. And then the final area that we touch on in the amendments is the recycling education. The city's proposing that we take over the majority of the public education role of the franchise agreement. When the franchise agreement was first developed back in 2003, the city did not have a sanitation manager or environmental education staff on board. The city now has staff on board with the ability and experience to conduct public education and outreach in-house. We feel like we can do that more efficiently while controlling those costs. The other thing with the education is some of the things, the way that we message now has changed significantly since 2003 as well. We now have a robust website, social media, and the public looks to those sites for information.
So that's where we're at with the amendments, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Okay, questions for Tim or Tyler from council?
Well, we went over it pretty thoroughly in admin committee, and I got all of my questions answered then.
Same here. I apologize for all of them, and thank you for answering them all, and we're good tonight.
Sandra, how about you?
I also attended admin just to learn, and I learned a great deal that night. Thank you very much. I'm good.
We know a lot about sanitation. How about you, Gina?
I have no questions either.
Maureen?
I was at the same meeting and I agree.
Oh, this is making it easy. How about you, Ann?
Well, in that case, I move to approve the resolution amending the solid waste franchise agreement, Exhibits A, C, D, E, and G.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Art and a second by Sandra to approve the resolution amending the solid waste franchise agreement exhibits A, C, D, E, and G. I will start to roll with Maureen.
Aye.
Ann.
Aye.
Brandy.
Aye.
Art.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
And Gina.
Aye.
Okay, well, we got that resolution. Now Gary's gonna, let's see. Okay, we're clipping along, we're getting down there. We got an update on the governor's public safety grant initiative revision and acceptance of the updated L2 and appropriations ordinance. Gary, you've got the podium.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was just checking with David. We have a half hour left on that DVD, so I will try to get done as quickly as possible here. Council's probably pretty sick of seeing me in front of you asking for an amended appropriation ordinance. Council passed one on August 3rd and again on August 17th. The one on August 3rd was before we knew what the GPSGI program was as patterned by the governor. That is the so-called public safety salary reimbursement program, where the city was allocated approximately $1.62 million in fiscal year 21 for reimbursement of public safety salaries. On August 3rd, that program had not yet been solidified to the point that we would move ahead on it, so council did not include that funding in that appropriation ordinance. We came back on the 17th, we knew what the number was, and at that time, council passed an amended appropriation ordinance that included that $1.62 million. There was a calculation that was given to us by the State Tax Commission that was preliminary, and because it has changed, we need to come to council, request an additional amendment. That number in the August 17th appropriation ordinance, the number was $54,022, which is the amount of money that represents Urban Renewal Agency increment that will be added to or deducted from, the 1.62 million, and will be paid by the city to the Moscow Urban Renewal Agency to make the Urban Renewal Agency whole. Because how this program works is the council, if it accepts that $1.62 million, then it must agree then to reduce property taxes by a commensurate $1.62 million. So, that being said, the number that we were given by the State Tax Commission was incorrect by just a few $1,000s. That increment number actually is $51,028. The ordinance that you have before you today has that number reflected in it. The L2 that is attached also reflects that. It is an ordinance, so council would need to vote on the ordinance and then pass it under suspension of the rules. However, I wanted to discuss an additional issue, and that is, as I've reported several times to the council in the past, that the Treasury regulations for the CARES Act funding, part of the $1.25 billion that was provided to the state of Idaho by the federal government has some requirements in it that this program, it has been challenged by some of the county's prosecutors across the state because they believe that it might, in a prohibited fashion, replace revenues, something that is prohibited by the original CARES Act. Additionally, there has been some discussion that because the funding is tied to a property tax reduction, that may exceed some of the requirements of the CARES Act as well. That being said, the Idaho Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General Brian Kane, issued an opinion just on the 3rd of September, so this is pretty new stuff, based upon September 2nd further guidance from the U.S. Treasury Department, which seems to remove some of those roadblocks. So, what staff is requesting tonight is that the council approve the second amended appropriation ordinance and authorize the mayor's execution of the L2 property tax certification, but also that the council directs staff to delay filing the L2 with Latah County until the final day for filing. That allows us to continue to determine if further guidance comes out that we can continue to advise the council. Again, the issue with the L2 is that once that is submitted, that sets the tax levy for next year. So if there is any issue with the CARES funding being recalled or not being issued, that the tax levy will have already been set. To that end, the mayor sent a letter to the Latah County Commissioners last week requesting that, and we've included that in the packet, requesting an extension to file the L2. The L2 is supposed to be filed by this Thursday, the 10th of September. By Idaho code, you can extend that with the authority of the county commissioners for an additional 7 working days. So that would put us at September 21st. However, that is a request made to the county commissioners. The county commissioners need to bring it up at their regular meeting because today was a holiday. They won't bring it up until tomorrow. So it is on their regular agenda for hearing tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So at this point, we would ask that council approve the second amended appropriation ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, that it be read by title and published by summary. And then afterwards that the council authorize the mayor's execution of the revised L2 property tax certification and direct staff to not file that L2 until the last day for filing by Latah County.
2 actions.
Yes.
Okay, questions for Gary?
Yes. Given the Attorney General's office's opinion on the legality plus the feedback from the federal government on the CARES funding, do the lawsuits, the court actions on the part of the other counties still go forward, or are they rendered moot?
Actually, the letter that was sent to the governor's attorney back in either May or June from the county prosecutors, and it was actually sent by the Latah County prosecutor, and I believe there were 22 other prosecuting attorneys who agreed with the submission of that letter, talking about the fact that they felt that the program went beyond the CARES Act authority. The Bonner County Commissioners filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for Northern California, which said that they actually filed a lawsuit on it. The county prosecutors have not done so, but Bonner County did. Now, we've been advised that we don't know how that lawsuit's going to come out. That's one of the things that I'm concerned about, is and want to buy as much possible time as we can in case some promulgation comes out of the court. But as it sits right now, we believe that it is the best route to go. We believe there are enough assurances from the Attorney General's opinion and the further direction from the U.S. Treasury Department that we can advise council that there's certainly, if council wants to take advantage of it, there's certainly a position you can do so.
Gina?
I'm thumping on the same drum I've hit the last couple times we've talked about this. Tell me we have, or can you please assure me, or include me in the communication plan for what happens next year?
Yes, we will.
To all of those?
It is going to take, it will take a bunch. Again, one of the things that we talked about a long time ago was that this will reduce property taxes to our taxpayers. It won't be a huge amount of money, certainly in the couple of $100, depending on the value of your home. If you have an escrow account, what will happen is the escrow account will be adjusted, so I have no idea when that money would be returned to a property owner. If you don't have an escrow account, I'm not familiar enough to know with the process when you would take advantage of that. The issue, of course, comes in the second year, in fiscal year 22, where whatever savings were allowed under this CARES program are no longer there. So those taxes go back up to what they would have been. Then in addition, should the price of government have increased and council decides to take up to the 3% allowed by law, that would compound that issue. And you're absolutely right. It is something that we will have to educate as much as we can. However, we've had situations in the past where property taxes are just hard to understand, but we will do all we can for outreach and education.
That was a good answer. I'm not quite sure what you said.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was a great answer, Gary. Just thought I'd throw that out there, okay? So,
no wonder nobody understands me.
Maureen, do you or Ann, either one of you have questions on this for Gary? Brandy, how about you?
No, I mean, it's encouraging to be getting some more encouragement about that this is going to be legal, so.
We're all having a great vocabulary.
Yes, right. Okay.
I'd like to move to approve the draft second revised fiscal year 2021 appropriations ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and the ordinance be read by title and published by summary.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Art and a second one by Sandra to approve the appropriations ordinance and the suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and the ordinance be read by title and published by summary. I'll start to roll with Maureen.
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
Brandy?
Aye.
Gina?
Aye.
Sandra?
Aye.
And Art, okay.
Aye.
Now, I will read this one. This is the first one I've got right, I think, tonight, Art. We're having all kinds of, this is the third one, ordinance that I've read tonight. And this is 2020-11, an ordinance replacing and superseding ordinance 2020-08, entitled Annual Appropriation Ordinance. This new ordinance is entitled Amended Annual Appropriation Ordinance, approximately $96,133,513 for the purpose of defraying all necessary expenses and liabilities of the City of Moscow, Latah County, State of Idaho for the 2021 fiscal year beginning the first day of October 2020 and ending the 30th day of September 2021, and allotting resources by fund for said appropriations for the objects and purposes set forth in this ordinance, levying ad valorem taxes in the amount of $7,366,666 for the 2021 fiscal year providing that the provisions of this ordinance be deemed severable, providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and publication according to law. Now we can move on to action item number 2.
Your Honor, I move that we authorize your execution of the revised L2 property tax certification and direct staff to hold the submission of that L2 until
The last
Final date.
possible
the final date.
Second. Final date.
Okay. We got a motion by Gina and a second by Sandra to authorize the mayor's execution of revised L2 property tax certification to send in the very last possible day and hour available to the Latah County Courthouse. Does that sound good?
That was beautiful.
I'll start the roll, Maureen. Ann?
Aye.
I read Maureen's lips.
Yeah.
Brandy?
Aye.
Sandra?
Aye.
Gina?
Hi.
And Art. Aye. We're all getting a little bit silly. Should we go into reports tonight, or should we adjourn and go to executive session?
Move we hold off on
Further-
reports.
Go to executive.
Second.
Okay, so these guys made a motion and approved it before I even got a chance, so, ladies and gentlemen, that does end our
I'll have to
regular,
wait to hear.
our
about-
regular meeting. We will be going to reports the next one. We are going to adjourn to executive session per Idaho Code 74-206, 1C and F. The meeting will not reconvene once the executive session is complete.
Be safe.
And there's a separate Zoom invitation for those council members who are attending remotely.
Okay.
Night, Victoria.
Good night. Victoria.